Good morning. I'd like to call to order the June 2021 MTA Board meeting, which is being held jointly with the Metro-North Railroad and Long Island Railroad Committee, New York City Transit Committee, Bridges and Tunnels Committee, Finance Committee, and Capital Program Oversight Committee. We are conducting portions of this meeting remotely via Zoom and conference call. Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 202.1, which has subsequently been extended and is still in effect, suspends the open meeting law requirements, and accordingly, any provisions in the MTA bylaws regarding public attendance at meetings and board members participating and voting by phone are also suspended. Now I'd like to ask our General Counsel, Tom Quigley, to do the official roll call for the record. Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board members, I'm now going to do the official roll call in alphabetical order. When I call your name, please verbally indicate your presence. If you are attending this meeting remotely, please make sure your microphone is off mute. Thank you. Chairman Foy.
Yes.
Commissioner Albert.
Yes.
Commissioner Barbas. Yes. Commissioner Borelli.
Present.
Commissioner Brigham.
Present.
Commissioner Brown.
Present.
Commissioner Brown.
Present.
Commissioner Calisi.
Physically present.
Commissioner Cortez Vasquez.
Present.
Commissioner Fleischer.
Present.
Commissioner Glucksman.
Present.
Commissioner Herman.
Present.
Commissioner Jones.
Present.
Commissioner Lacewell.
Present.
Commissioner Law.
Here.
Commissioner Lynn.
Here.
Commissioner Mack.
Here.
Commissioner Mahaltis.
Morning.
Commissioner Mojica.
Here.
Commissioner Poore.
Present.
Commissioner Samuelson.
Yeah.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Here.
Commissioner Tessitore.
Here.
And Commissioner Zuckerman.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Well done, Tom. Later in the meeting, agency presidents and staff will submit procurements and actions for a vote. Your presence at this meeting at the time of a vote will be considered an affirmative vote for the record. If you would like to vote no or abstain, please state your name and your vote at that time. We will now move into our virtual comment period. As in the prior month, speakers were able to register on Monday and send in their comments. We'll play public comments now for 30 minutes and make the full public comment video available online.
Of course not. I know. Listen, I'm still.
Good afternoon, everybody. We have 18 members of the public registered to speak today. The first 30 minutes of public comment will be delivered at the board meeting, and the remainder will be posted online for the public and board members on Wednesday. Again, as a reminder, we would like to thank all of the public speakers for adhering to the MTA rules of conduct and decorum. I would also like to remind our public speakers that in the interest of time and fairness to all speakers, we limit everyone to 2 minutes. Please be aware that there will be a warning beep to remind you that you have 30 seconds to conclude your remarks. Our first speaker today is Alita Dupree.
Thank you, Chair Pat Foy and members. Alita Dupree for the record. My pronouns are she and her. It's always good to be back with you. Can't get enough Grand Central Terminal. I hope to be back on the system and see Grand Central Terminal and the ride trains, just like I did back in 1980. I'm looking forward to more ADA work. I did get to see the press conferences. I hope we can do more of that. One of those a week. Keep you all busy. I think ribbon cuttings are a good use of MTA's time and money because it's about public awareness. So ADA includes me, especially when I'm having a wrong side of the tracks kind of day and don't feel like climbing stairs. And we have to continue at looking at how we manage our fare. It's time for us to get the Omni fare card and fare app up because as I've said before, I hope to really be on the system soon. And I am still having some trepidations about using my reduced fare Metro card. So I'll see how it comes, but I might be doing some Omni. And safety, of course, is important. I try not to read news reports. I believe in this system, but I don't want to be scared, and I don't think anyone should be. So we have to keep safety in mind. And I am looking forward to our new leadership changes. I certainly think that we should have an explainer as to how that's going to happen, given recent actions in the legislature that may have an effect on that. So I'm looking forward to seeing what our new leadership changes can look like. But again, I keep saying it, but I hope to be back on the system soon. System that I grew up with and enjoy. I just want to have more of it in my life this summer because it's something near and dear to me. And it's because it is legendary and steeped in a great tradition and history. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is CN.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to speak about paratransit, the eHealth On Demand program. I've been noticing lately that there has been a problem with getting an eHealth On Demand taxi when I'm in one of the outer boroughs. For example, when I'm in Queens, in Astoria, or Brighton Beach in Brooklyn, or anywhere like that, I've noticed that it's been very difficult to get a taxi. In fact, 2 weeks ago on a Sunday, I was in Manhattan. I want to go to St. Albans in Queens, which is a mostly African-American community. And I'm very upset that 14 different taxis accepted the trip and immediately denied the trip. And I'm concerned that some of the taxi drivers, I would hope this is not the case, might have an issue with driving to certain communities in the city. And I hope that is not the case. I hope we moved on, especially being in 2021 and with Juneteenth just recently. I hope that's not the case. So I'm very concerned about the long wait times and the way that taxi drivers are not willing to do long trips into the outer boroughs. And answering Commissioner Swartz's question, and at the last board meeting, he wondered why, just moving on to crime for a second in the subway, why repeat offenders repeat their crimes. It's simply because, unfortunately, the United States does not care about rehabilitation of criminals like Europe does. And this is what happens, a revolving door where criminals go back into jail and learn how to be better criminals. So we need to, as a society, really look into rehabilitation. Also, I have a friend who uses a subway every morning on the 2 train, and he wants to know, where are the police officers? He sees a gentleman smoking crack on the 2 train in the morning during the week, and there's no officers between 110th Street and 42nd Street. So I'd like to know what's going on. Where are these officers? Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Andy Pollock.
Good morning, Chairman Foy, members of the board. So a couple matters I like to bring up this month. Number one, I was looking at the Long Island Railroad committee book for this month. And as somebody who lives in Northeast Queens, I'm very disappointed that, again, we are only getting hourly service on the Port Washington branch because of more concrete tie installation, this time between Bayside and Great Neck. And this is a concern for also my fellow Northeast Queens residents, because now, in order to get to Citi Field, we are not going to have half-hourly service to Met games. So please reevaluate how you can run the trains half-hourly when the Mets are playing at Citi Field. I've notified Mets owner Steve Cohen about this because this is just completely unacceptable. So hopefully the Mets will reach out to the MTA and something can be figured out. And the second thing I want to bring up is the cleaning. I've noticed on the news that a lot of subway cars are getting soiled. Please do not slack off on that, because I'm going to possibly be going back to the subway system in a month or two. And the last thing I need is to see a dirty subway car. And I'll mention, I've been on the Q17 twice in the past month. Each time I've been on the bus in Fresh Meadows, the buses are very clean. I've never seen a bus so clean before. So that's my message. Just keep cleaning the buses and subways. Also, everybody else, please return back to the subway system and the transit system overall. Traffic in Queens has become such a nightmare, and I believe it's because not enough people are taking mass transit, especially on the weekends. And this should apply to July 4th weekend as well. So with that, thank you all very much. Have a good 4th of July, and I'll hopefully speak to you all soon. Take care.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tashia Larabors.
Hello, good morning. My name is Tasha Larabors. I'm a community organizer for Accessoride for the Center for the Independence of the Disabled and a member of Accessoride Reform Group Coalition. Just to avoid going over the 2 minutes, I'll give a brief summary of the important issues at hand. Computer hacking when MetroCard discontinuance is around the corner. Assessment center employees making it challenging to be approved for Accessoride. Curb and arrow services for the on-demand pilot program, leaving passengers waiting longer or just not showing up because of flat rates. And Accessoride drivers not showing up and marking the passenger as a no-show. Here we are in the middle of 2021, and we still rely on the archaic method to request a trip. All in all, I see sabotage with both these programs for the disabled community, don't you? Thank you very much and have a nice day.
Thank you, Tasha. Our next speaker is Charlton D'Souza.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charlton D'Souza, and I'm the president of Passengers United. Yet again, for 2 hours, passengers were left stranded on the Q3 bus to JFK Airport and in Jamaica on Friday night. And what happened was there was a very nice professional bus driver on the Q2 bus on Friday night into Saturday morning. And the bus number is 8011. That bus operator went above and beyond to help passengers who were stranded on the Q3. But why are buses in Queens and throughout the city being canceled now on a daily basis? Too many customers are being left stranded. And why is it that the MTA is not putting this on Twitter, Facebook, or they're not putting this on their website, that a bus has been canceled either because it broke down, there's a driver shortage, or there's problems with the equipment? People have a right to know. And also, I'm upset the Q60 runs are not being filled overnight into the city. And that is an important route. And a lot of passengers don't want to get on the subway because of the crime that's going on. So the Q60 runs need to be filled. And we need to make sure that if we have buses on another route where there's too many buses running, maybe we should prioritize an area where there's very little to no bus service. And like this, it's equal for everyone, because the cabs are costing like $85 from Manhattan all the way to Queens Village. It's just too much money to pay. And right now the subways are not safe. And in terms of the subways, I've noticed the trains are getting filthy again. They're getting dirty. The homeless are back sleeping on the trains overnight. So we need to make sure that we have, 200 social workers in the subway cleaning the system and making sure that all the trains are clean. And in terms of the city ticket and freedom ticket for the Long Island Railroad, the MTA needs to make sure that they reduce the fare on that. I think that a weekly Atlantic ticket should be maybe $45 or $50, especially with the pandemic and we're trying to get people back. $60 is just too much of money. So as the president of Passengers United, I hope that the board members will look into these issues and inquire. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Iman.
Hi, good morning. Sorry for a little bit of background noise. My name is Iman Ramawi. I'm in the Disability Justice Program at New York Lawyers for the Public Interest. And I've been using Accessoride regularly for years. And we just want Accessoride to be reliable and affordable transportation and make sure that it's, available for everyone, because it's vitally important to everyone in New York City. On-demand has not only changed our lives for the better, but it drastically improves our quality of life. Not taking several hours to get somewhere, not having to wait hours on a ride, not having to be left stranded in the middle of nowhere makes a big difference in my life and the lives of the 1,200 people who are lucky enough to have the on-demand program. Accessoride customers are allowed are allowed to use on-demand, but only 1,200 out of the 170,000. But lately, on-demand customers have noticed a troubling trend on curb rides being unavailable. It's taken up to 3 hours to get a ride, just like the bad old days. This is neither equitable nor reliable. Not having a discount for many daily rides while non-disabled people don't get the benefits of discounts is discriminatory and wrong. It's not my fault that there aren't enough accessible train stations. It's not my fault that people don't want to share seats on buses. That means I'm forced to use Access-a-Ride, which means I pay more. I have had multiple meetings around the city. I'm using Access-a-Ride up to 4 hours a day, which adds up over the weeks and months. And it adds up to a lot more than non-Access-a-Ride customers are spending monthly. Discounts must be made available for Access-a-Ride customers immediately. This is especially outrageous since the MTA has promised to give Access-a-Ride customers discounts when Omni was put in place. And now we have learned that the promises are broken. We urge you to fix on-demand immediately and to institute discount fares for Access-a-Ride customers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ruth Lowenkron.
Good morning, Ruth Lowenkron. I'm the director of the Disability Justice Program at New York Lawyers for the Public Interest, working together with Iman Ramawi, who just spoke before me. Our organization, New York Lawyers for the Public Interest, is also one of the founding members of the Access-a-Ride Reform Group, otherwise known as ARG. And I come here wearing both my NILPI hat and my ARG hat to talk about the two same concerns that my colleague Iman spoke about. On-demand service for Access-a-Ride. We have spoken to you months on end years ago about how horrific Access-a-Ride services can be. They're not reliable. The rides take far too long. The combined rides take you through multiple boroughs. You heard us. You said you will work on an idea. You came up with on-demand service, recognizing that the disability community requires the same has the same needs as everyone else to get where they want to go on time when they want to without advanced reservations. We had a honeymoon period for, again, as Iman mentioned, only 1,200 people, but they had a wonderful honeymoon. On-demand worked brilliantly. And notably, we were out there telling you that every time. We said, this is amazing. This is life-changing. Those were the words we used. And now what is happening? Now, as Iman says, we're back to the bad old days. And sadly, we were told by MTA officials, well, if you don't like it, we have other services. No, I know that's not how MTA works. You put a product out there, you stand behind it, you give us the best services, and the disability community counts on that. So on-demand needs to be fixed so that people are not waiting lengthy time for a ride. On-demand needs to be made permanent. It needs to be expanded well beyond the 1,200
Thank you so much
people.
for your comments.
I'm
Please
not
conclude.
quite done. I'll have one more
Please
second
conclude.
if you don't
Please
mind. I
conclude.
would just like, thank you. I
Please
just would like to
conclude your remarks. Thank you.
Yes, I will do that. Thank you. And the last thing I'd like to say is that with respect to the fare discounts, we were promised that the Access-a-Ride community would be able to have those discounts with Omni, and now we are flat out told that's not true. Again, that's not MTA. MTA does not lie, does it?
Thank you, Ruth. Our next speaker is Brian Burke.
Good afternoon, board. My name is Brian Burke. I'm a whistleblower at the MTA. I have appeared before the board numerous times, most recently last March, regarding the criminal activity the board has been directing in my direction. Primarily wage theft going back to 2015, but also forgery, fraud, perjury, subornation of perjury, obstruction of justice. Now, I spoke to, of course, the board through this method, but I also spoke to Ms. Feinberg's office when she was appointed as president. I also spoke to her predecessor. I spoke to a Mr. Nugent in our office, who's very generous with his time, spent over 40 minutes, and I can only assume gave the information of criminality by our subordinates to Ms. Feinberg. and she has chosen to do nothing about it. I would like to this time give you my phone number, 646-434-8513, 646-434-8513. My email is my name, Brian T. Burke, BrianTBurke@gmail.com. Now I want to thank and congratulate Mr. Leiber for being appointed to the CEO position. And I understand, of course, he was not in the chain of command involving this crime. So I would expect that when he assumes office, he will give fresh eyes to this and not assign it to the MTA Inspector General investigator, Mr. Seamus Weir, who covered up the criminal acts done against the Central Park Five, which he was a detective in that situation. Obviously, some in the MTA seem to think that type of crime against individuals, sending them to prison, is the same as defrauding whistleblowers, something that you seem to think is in your purview. I have contacted the Assembly and the Attorney General's office and Comptroller because I believe this is being directed by Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you for your remarks, Mr. Burke. Our next speaker is Miriam Fisher.
Good afternoon. I'm here to continue the dialogue and reaffirm the needs of people with disabilities, specifically elevators and benches. Elevators for people with disabilities, seniors, parents with strollers. We all know the story of the mother who fell and died on steep steps, luggage, bad backs, bad knees. I speak specifically of my needs and myself. I live in Chelsea. Near 23rd, there's no elevator. 8th Avenue, 7th Avenue, 6th Avenue, nada. Broadway, nada, not until Park Avenue South. That's 4 continuing stations along 23rd Street. That particular subway on 23rd and 6th is symbolic and emblematic to me of some of the disregard of the needs of people with disabilities. It was closed for months to renovation. We have very lovely mosaics, no elevator. It was totally closed for months. It's on the same street as Sellis Manor, which is a residence for visually impaired and people with disabilities. To add to the insult to injury, in I believe February, about 5 months ago, benches were removed and there was conflicting and garbled information from the MTA that it was to dissuade the homeless from congregating there. It was to clean the benches. Well, that's a long time to clean benches. I can do better than that. 2 benches were returned to the platform a while back. I took it last week on either side of the exit entrance, 2 benches for a very long stop on 23rd Street, which does not allow for social distancing for people who might be pregnant, need to sit. I have not used them, though I need to sit because there were already several people on it. 2 benches.
Miriam, please conclude your remarks.
I only know the stations that I'm familiar with that have no benches, 53rd and Lexington on the F&M, one of the levels on 59th and Lexington. These are needs of people with disabilities to sit also.
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you. Our next speaker is Murray Bowden.
Yeah, take a picture of me in a wheelchair. Go back a little bit. See me? Yeah, I'm in a wheelchair. My assistant's working with me. You come alongside so they can hear me. I'm in the parking lot of Wegmans supermarket in Portchester because I can't do this at the MTA lot. It just doesn't show enough. My car is up at the end there, and I'll go up there. Come alongside me. I'm pushing myself in a wheelchair. This lot has no space to separate the people from the cars. And there should be a crosswalk along the whole aisle so that people are separated from the cars. And people like me in wheelchairs could be separated. You make bike lanes and but you don't make it more. Come on, keep up with me. I'm good at this. I'm trying to get to the front where I show you people crossing where there is no crosswalk. Here's a guy. He's walking. Look, he's walking. no cars. The cars come and there's no separation. You have bike lanes all over the place, but no things in a place like this where, get there. This is my car, we just passed it. I got out of the car and get into the wheelchair. Okay. Now, here I am. Yeah, give me the camera. Here, push me, push me. You can see people walking, you know, pushing their carts where they go. Hold it, stop. There's no curb here. People can get on and off anywhere. Yeah, there's a crosswalk, but it's not where the people are going. Turn me around. Here's a guy going to his thing. Why isn't there a separation between him and the cars that are going here? People are walking all over. There is no curb. This is the new way. The level parking lot is level. I hope this works. That's Wegmans up there. You see.
Thank you so much, Murray. Thank you. Our next speaker is Lisa Daglian.
Greetings, I'm Lisa Daglian, Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA PCAC. I'm delivering my testimony on Monday, June 21st for the Wednesday, June 23rd board meeting. So apologies if I've missed any breaking news in the intervening days. As seasons change and we spring into summer, and as many COVID restrictions have been lifted in New York State, we're glad that phased in-person meetings are here, though we look forward to attending. However, we're anxious for the day when committee meetings where detailed presentations on projects and proposals are shared will be reinstated. You're doing good work and should be talking about it in that forum. Quick overviews and written synopses are no substitute. The details provided at committee meetings also help inform our testimony. For instance, we have questions about the Eastside Access Special Purpose Entity that you'll be discussing. We first inquired about this at the May 7th Senate Committee Oversight Hearing, and it's possible our questions would be answered during committee meetings, but in their absence, we'll raise them here. From what we understand, a new entity will be responsible for operating and maintaining infrastructure supporting the LIRR's access into Grand Central. The LIRR will be responsible for its railroad operations, and Metro North will remain responsible for its existing operations and management at Grand Central. But how will the three collaborate in planning and delivering service and managing unified operations? Most importantly, how will it affect riders? We look forward to Eastside Access opening next year and hope for a seamless commute. Similarly, we look forward to Penn Access, and we're pleased to testify in support of it last week. With that, commuter rail will finally be in reach of East Bronx riders, many of whom don't live anywhere near a subway. It must also be financially within their reach. To truly make this new transit option equitable and move people out of express buses and cars, it's crucial that the MTA embrace expanding Atlantic Ticket and implementing Freedom Ticket Phase 2. City commuter rail fare discounts with transfers to subways and buses. Thank you. We also welcome the two new board members and wish them well. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Lisa. Our next speaker is Joseph Rappaport.
Good morning. I'm Joe Rappaport of the Brooklyn Center for Independence of the Disabled, or BCID. Last month, I testified about the MTA's decision to hold just one big meeting a month, which limits the ability of the public to speak and limits the kind of public discussions the board should be having. I see there's a little progress on that front. But for an agency that talks a lot about transparency, things are still looking pretty murky. Let's get back to committee meetings, that is public committee meetings, not behind the scenes, informational committee meetings that, or get-togethers that skirt the public meetings law, if not outright violate it. My colleague Valerie Joseph and other people already have testified about problems with the e-hail on-demand accessoride service. Let me add my voice to theirs and urge the MTA not to just throw up its hands and act as if it can't solve these problems. The MTA can help get drivers and accessible vehicles back out on the streets, serving accessoride customers. An earlier speaker mentioned the news conferences the MTA has held about new elevators and accessible station. We've got no problems with news conferences and have even joined in on them at times. But what the MTA hasn't done is to make a legally binding commitment to a fully accessible subway system. We urge you to settle the multiple lawsuits against you. And finally, 31 years after the ADA passed, make that commitment. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is H.P. Schroer.
Good morning. My name is H.P., World War II veteran and director of UMIWI. While many changes have occurred over the 5 years we've been appearing before this board, there are two things that have remained constant. One is our resolve to get the board to allow all veterans to purchase fares at half price. Two, the board's insistence it could not afford to do it. At last month's meeting, I again asked those representing the mayor, will you support giving veterans a discount? Robert Lynn, I'm still waiting for an answer. For those representing the governor, I asked, will you dedicate the estimated 2 cents from every fare to fund the discount? And will you incorporate a veterans discount in your budget? Again, I received no answer. Veterans answered the nation's call to fight and protect our country. We'd like to know, when are the members of this board going to fight for us? Jano, I've always admired your can-do attitude and look forward to working with you and this board to correct this injustice. I thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Valerie Joseph.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Valerie Joseph. I'm from the Brooklyn Center for the Independence of the Disabled. I'm an accessorized rider and advocate. I've testified here before about the on-demand access ride pilot program, which until recently has been one of the biggest and best things for the MTA. Unfortunately, things are not going well. Drivers do not want to pick us up because they tell us they aren't getting enough money to make the program worth what it's supposed to be for us, the riders. That puts us in a real bind. Since the ability to be able to get a ride whenever we want has made a huge difference for me and other riders on the on-demand program. We know that there are few yellow taxis and other drivers available. We also know that the MTA didn't select the biggest and the best vendor, Curb, for its broker program. And we are worried that it will not serve the on-demand customers as well. We urge you to figure out the adequately how to serve us. We should not be stuck because the MTA's vendors aren't paying adequate fees. It's time to fix this problem. One other note, to protect riders during the pandemic, the MTA suspended shared rides for regular accessorized users. That has made a big difference for riders who don't have to take long trips around the city picking up other AAR users. I urge you to continue that policy, pandemic or no pandemic. And I would like to add, 2 days ago, I went out and I was stuck in the middle of the night because I could not get a cab ride because the driver did not want to pick me up. Unfair.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that concludes public comment.
Thanks to the public speakers for their comments. As I said before, the full public comment video will be available online on the MTA website. Thanks for joining us at this month's board meeting, the first since February 2020, where some members of the board, staff, and the media are joining us in person here at 2 Broadway, while others are attending virtually. We're delighted to welcome colleagues back after a year plus of meeting on Zoom. It's a testament to how far we've come that we can now safely gather in person. Last week, Governor Cuomo eased New York State COVID-19 restrictions after the state reached an important vaccination milestone. Namely, 70% of New Yorkers have now received at least their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. This is amazing news, and we hope to see these numbers climb even higher. At the MTA, we believe well over 60% of our workforce has been vaccinated as well. We continue to encourage everyone who has not yet been vaccinated to do so to protect themselves and their families, friends, and colleagues. I'd like to take a moment to welcome 2 new board members who are joining us today after their recent state Senate confirmations. Welcome to Commissioners Harold Poor and Gerard Bringman. Commissioner Poor was recommended to the board by Orange County Executive Steve Newhouse and formally nominated by Governor Cuomo. Commissioner Poor has a long history of public service for city and county government and currently serves as Deputy County Executive for Orange County. He previously served as Orange County's Director of Operations and the Village Administrator for Bronxville prior to that. Commissioner Bringman was recommended via the Long Island Railroad Commuter Council, which he currently chairs. Commissioner Bringman is also an executive committee member for the Permanent Citizens Advisory Commission to the MTA, in addition to serving as a project manager and superintendent for O&D Builders. We thank both of you for your commitment to serving this region, especially at this critical time in the history of this agency in our state. You're joining the board at a key moment as we work to lead the region's economic recovery from the pandemic, and we look forward to your contributions. While we hope that the worst of the pandemic is behind us, the reality is we are still suffering greatly from its effects. I'd like to take a moment to reflect on the loss of members of the MTA family who have passed since our last meeting. As we've unfortunately had to do far too many times over the last year, we'll acknowledge their service and memory with a moment of silence after a reading of their names. Sarah.
Thanks, Pat. Sadly, I have 2 names to read today. Chris Van Putten, who was a maintainer of electrical equipment at New York City Transit, and Harold Walfert, who is a station agent. Our thoughts are obviously with their families and colleagues.
Thank you, Sarah. Kathy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Metro North has lost another employee to COVID-19. Sean Vecchio was 50 years old and a Connecticut native who loved working trains as a locomotive engineer. He had more than 21 years of service. Outside of his job, he was a well-respected member of his community and a devoted caregiver to his 2 children. Our hearts are broken with this loss, and our deepest condolences go out to his family and loved ones. He will be truly missed by his Metro North family. Thank you.
I now ask all of you to please join us in a moment of silence for our fallen colleagues. Thank you. It's important that we continue to honor our fallen colleagues as we move into the recovery stage of the pandemic. Their service and sacrifice will never be forgotten. Before I move on to more general agency matters, I also want to recognize the executive leadership changes set to take effect next month. As announced a few weeks ago, I plan to leave the MTA next month to lead the Empire State Development Corporation. It has been an extreme honor to lead the agency and serve the region over the last 4 years, especially during the last 15 to 16 months as we all navigated this unprecedented public health crisis. And I thank the governor for the opportunity to serve. We will never forget the heroic actions of our colleagues across the entire agency during the pandemic, and will remember forever those lost to COVID-19. As you know, the governor has introduced legislation to formally split the chairman and CEO position into 2 separate roles. Sarah Feinberg and Janno Lieber have been nominated to serve as chair and CEO respectively. Both have been key leaders in the MTA's response to the pandemic and have led New York City Transit and MTA construction and development respectively, with dignity, dedication, great skill, and to great effect. They are both well equipped to continue leading this agency as the MTA and the region recover from this unprecedented once-in-a-century crisis. We hope the New York State Senate acts quickly to finally pass the legislation that allows for their appointments so they can be confirmed in those positions as soon as possible. These leadership changes will have no impact on our core mission to deliver safe, reliable, and efficient service for New York and the region. Safety remains our top priority, as always. Following the latest updates from the CDC and the governor's announcement about easing COVID restrictions, we have amended our mask policy. Masks are no longer required to be worn at outdoor platforms and bus stops. However, it is critical to note they are still mandatory at all indoor stations and while riding the train, bus, and our paratransit service. Masks continue to be available at all station booths and on board some buses if you happen to forget a face covering at home. The MTA Mask Force, which just celebrated 1 year of service last week, also is going strong and still in our system to distribute masks for anyone who might need one. I want to recognize and thank the extraordinary work of Chief Customer Officer Sarah Meyer and her team for all they've done in the last year to lead this initiative, which has been adopted by multiple transit agencies across the country. Beyond wearing a mask, the single best thing New Yorkers can do is to get the vaccine. Governor Cuomo extended our wildly popular public vaccination program through at least June 26th at Grand Central Terminal and Penn Station. We are incredibly proud that the MTA has helped more than 22,000 people get their shots. Thousands of people who would likely have not gotten the vaccine otherwise are taking advantage of the convenience of the program to protect themselves, their families, and their neighbors. Recovering ridership, great news. It's vital that we keep doing our part as more and more customers return to public transportation. We are setting new pandemic-era ridership records what seems like every few days, including on 3 consecutive days last week. Last Friday, the subways hit a high of 2.57 million customers, while the Long Island Railroad surpassed 122,000 customers, and Metro-North carried more than 104,000. Our system is a mirror of the city and the region, and to see this level of recovered ridership bodes well for our region's wider recovery. Of course, there's still a long way to go to hit our pre-pandemic normal of 5.5 million weekday riders on the subways, but things are going in the right direction, and we're optimistic, and I am too, that as more and more people return to work and socialize in the city and go to concerts and ball games, those numbers will continue to climb. Every single one of our agencies is seeing impressive ridership gains, particularly on the weekends for Long Island Railroad and Metro-North as we move into the summer months. The MTA service region has so much to offer for recreation and leisure, and we're proud to carry passengers everywhere they want to go, from the Tarrytown River Walk to the beaches of Montauk and from the Cloisters to Rockaway Beach. To coincide with the start of the season, Metro-North this week implemented its first comprehensive service increase since schedules were modified due to the pandemic more than a year ago. Another more significant increase is planned for August, which will bring Metro-North to 83% of weekday pre-COVID service levels, just in time for Labor Day. The MTA has been continually monitoring ridership at all our agencies with an eye towards increasing service when the time is right. To that end, we continue to aggressively promote our Take the Train campaign. You may have seen our ads featured at the Tribeca Film Festival, which ended this past Sunday. We're also running a partnership with the immersive Van Gogh exhibit that provides Metro-North and Long Island customers with discounted tickets. You can find the details on the MTA's discount webpage. But perhaps nothing in our system is more evocative of New York's ongoing recovery than the return of our Music Under New York program. After 14 months of silence, performers are once again bringing joy and music to commuters underground. Kudos to Sandra Bloodworth, head of MTA Arts and Design, for leading the charge to bring music back. Public art and music are such a vital part of the city's cultural landscape, and we've all felt its absence since performances were stopped due to the pandemic. Finally, I want to take a moment to recognize the extraordinary work of former Chief Communications Officer Abby Collins, who left the MTA earlier this month for the private sector. Abby did a tremendous job leading the communications team through the most difficult chapter of the agency's history, helping to craft and fine-tune information and messaging for customers and employees alike during a once-in-a-100-year crisis. Abby was also the driving force behind the Take the Train and Take the Bus campaign. We thank her for her visionary leadership and wish her all the best going forward. Additionally, I want to extend my congratulations to a former MTA Chief Operating Officer, Nuria Fernandez. Nuria was recently confirmed by the United States Senate this month to serve as Administrator of the Federal Transit Administration. As I've said before, Nuria is perfectly suited to this role, having most recently served as the agency's Deputy Administrator. But beyond that, she has a wide range of experience running large systems that informs her expertise. FTA is lucky to have her at the helm during this critical moment. And with that, I'll turn to Pat Warren.
Hey, Pat, it's Kevin. I have a question first.
Commissioner Law.
Hey, I just want to verify that you will be with us at the July board meeting. I didn't want to miss an opportunity to give you proper recognition for all of your service.
Kevin, I thank you for that.
And you will be?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Chairman. As is always the case, the safety and security of our employees and customers remains paramount. Regarding COVID-19, the number of new cases in New York City and MTA continues to drop. On average, we currently see less than 1 new case per day across the MTA, which is remarkable given the pandemic continues to rage around the world. Pursuing the vaccination of our workforce is our major safety effort. As of today, we have over 32,500 of our 70,000 person workforce vaccinated through one of our vaccination sites or sponsored programs. Further surveys of our workforce indicate that another 15 to 20% of them have been independently taking advantage of the availability of vaccinations at local pharmacies and other city, county, and state facilities. In short, our vaccination percentages are currently in line with the city and state statistics for vaccinations. We continue to pursue every avenue to encourage our employees to get vaccinated. The MTA supported New York State pop-up vaccination sites at Penn and GCT just mentioned. Continue to see active use with the doubling since our last board meeting of the number of individuals that have been vaccinated there, which include our employees. We continue to have our mobile vaccination van travel between our depots, yards, and stations to support our employees who are challenged getting to other vaccination sites. We also continue our vaccinations at Livingston Plaza locations. Attractive incentive programs and aggressive employee communication remain part of our efforts to continue our work to protect our workforce and customers. We highly encourage everyone to pursue vaccinations. National guidance from the CDC as well as New York State have recently changed, and MTA has amended our guidance accordingly. In particular, as you just heard, our guidance continues to require the wearing of masks on trains, buses, and paratransit vehicles, as well as at indoor stations. Masks are no longer required at our outdoor stations and platforms. We continue to monitor our mask usage in our system and observe the mask usage rates remain above the 90% level on our buses, trains, and subways. We thank our ridership for their support and respect shown to one another. As is our standard, we continue the many protocols previously established to protect our employees and customers, to include distribution of masks and other PPE. Last Friday, New York State issued new guidance on mask usage and social distancing for within state buildings and facilities. Consequently, we are amending our internal guidance and will publish it shortly. Per national and state guidance, we continue daily cleaning and disinfecting of our system and employee workspaces, and the continued use of advanced air filtration enhancements in our facilities, trains, and buses. On the topic of security, we are encouraged by the progress towards improved security, which is validated in part by increases in ridership. We recognize that to support the continued recovery of New York City, it's imperative to provide a healthy, safe, and secure environment for our employees and customers. Towards this goal, MTA continues aggressive increases in CCTV camera installation and monitoring across the system. MTA is set to bring 135 more police officers into its ranks next month and continues to surge MTA police at select locations. Last month's doubling of security guards has brought additional patrols to nearly 100 stations, as well as more presence on trains. The NYPD has considerably stepped up their presence and operations on trains and on station platforms, which contributes to the perception of improved security, and we are grateful. Additionally, recent coordinated and increased joint policing and homeless outreach efforts in and around Penn Station are also showing signs of improved security and quality of service there. We applaud the city's efforts, recent efforts, and encourage them to continue to increase their policing and homeless services efforts to support this positive trend. This is a promising start, but we are aware that there is always a risk of backslide, particularly if we lose police support. With this as a backdrop, we recognize that there remains much to do in order to continue these trends and continue to bring New York City back. Now, let me introduce MTA's Acting Chief of Police, Joe McGran, followed by NYPD's Transit Bureau Chief, Catherine O'Reilly. Chief McGran.
Morning, everyone. System-wide year-to-date overall crime on the commuter rails is flat at 51 crimes. For the month of May, we are up 2 crimes, 11 versus 9. But of concern, however, is the jump in felony assaults and burglaries. Of the 15 assaults year-to-date, 3 were on police officers making arrests, but 3 were also on our conductors involved in fare disputes. We have arrests in a number of these conductor assaults, 2 out of the 3, but the work continues to make the line safer for everyone. Of the remaining assaults, there are 9, and of those 9, we have arrests in 5 cases. A number of those involve people who are known to each other and got involved in personal disputes. For the burglaries, however, there were 13 year-to-date. 1 individual was arrested for 3 separate burglaries that occurred here at Grand Central Terminal. 2 other individuals were arrested in separate incidents. So we continue to make strides in that regard and to work with our partners with the NYPD, Long Island Railroad, Metro North, and Staten Island Railway, and the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee. We strive to make the system as safe as possible for our fellow employees and also for our ridership. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Chief O'Reilly.
Good morning, everyone. During the month of May, total major felonies in the subway system were up 81 additional incidents compared to May of last year. There were increases in robberies, grand larceny, and felony assaults during the month of May, a trend that has now begun to stabilize through the first 3 weeks of June. Crime remains down overall year to date within the transit system. Total major felonies are down 33.4%, 309 fewer incidents this year. There were an additional 79 felony assaults, 116 fewer robberies, 255 fewer grand larcenies for the year. A quick note specific to those larcenies: as more and more riders return to the rails, we're encouraging everyone to remain alert and to keep their property secure from criminal opportunists. Finally, I just want to note some of the good work that continues across the subway system. A few days ago, Officers Gonzalez and Carabello arrested a man for threatening a passenger with a knife as the officers were patrolling aboard the southbound number 2 train in the Bronx. They were approached by the victim, who had been menaced, threatened in the next car. The officers stopped him and arrested him, charged him with menacing and criminal possession of a weapon. They quickly learned the suspect had been arrested several weeks earlier and charged with attempted murder, committing this latest crime while awaiting his next court date on a prior case. This is a recurring theme that we need our district attorneys and judges to address. That is all I have for this month's update, and I thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Chief. Chairman, that concludes our remarks.
Thank you. Any questions for Pat or the chiefs?
Pat, would you mind if I jumped in for 1 second?
Please, sir.
I just wanted to thank, obviously, Chief McGran for his ongoing service, but I also wanted to thank Chief O'Reilly for all of her great communication and assistance and partnership, particularly over the last several weeks. You may remember in the last board meeting, we talked about the need for us to have a little more information, or it would be helpful for us to have more information on deployment, numbers of officers in the system, and Chief O'Reilly's been very helpful in providing that information to us. We had a couple of good phone calls in the month since the last board meeting, and very grateful for her partnership and help. And as Chief O'Reilly said, we're seeing the numbers come down over the last 3 weeks. You know, at the board meetings, we look back at the previous month, and so, you know, at best the data is at least 3 weeks old and goes up to 7 weeks old. So the more recent data is really looking better, and I'm grateful to Chief O'Reilly for her support and for all of the officers that are in the system. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for those comments. Anybody else questions for Pat Warren or the chiefs? All right, great. Now we're going to hear from Bob Freund, our Chief Financial Officer, for a brief update on MTA finances. Bob.
Thank you. We continue to work on the July plan. For those new board members or those who haven't gone through the process before, the July financial plan will present the preliminary budget for 2022. It will also present forecasts for 23 and 24, and for the first time, a look at 25. We will update in the July plan all the events that have happened in improving ridership and customer crossings on our bridges and tunnels, so you will see that at that time. Later today in this meeting, David Keller will go through Budget Watch, where you'll hear about the performance year to date as well as the last month. So again, look forward to July. I'm sure there'll be much discussion at that time. Mr. Chairman?
Bob, thanks. Any questions for Bob?
Yeah, I got a question.
Commissioner Brown.
Yeah, how long can the budget sustain congestion pricing not passing? At what point does congestion pricing being stalled in Washington begin to affect our financial picture and the bonds we sell?
Well, again, I remind everyone that congestion pricing is for capital. Okay, it's not for the operating budget. We did have in the lockbox both the internet sales tax and the mansion tax, which will go into congestion pricing lockbox, the ability to use those dollars through this year for operating. We didn't need it because of the federal funds coming in for this year, so we put that money into capital. So right now, we're fronting the capital program with the sales tax monies that we have and the mansion tax monies that we have. So we're not in a position now to really be needing absolutely at this point in time, the congestion pricing proceeds for the capital program. But clearly, we've got an ambitious capital program. Jano's ready to go. We've got contracts lined up. So we look forward to having those dollars available to commit against so that we can move the capital program forward. But in terms of the operating budget, just as a reminder, the congestion pricing doesn't affect that. It is all money going to the capital program for 20 to 24.
Thanks. Any other questions for Bob?
I have one.
Commissioner Albert.
Yeah, Bob, will all the funds that were taken from operating for capital uses be returned to operating?
The statute says to the extent that we use the capital funds, which again, we've only used the monies from last year for operating, to the extent that we have repaid our own internal borrowing or external borrowing, to the extent we then still have monies available, that we'll use those to put the monies back into the capital program. So we're keeping track of what we've spent out of those lockbox dollars, and to the extent at the end of the day the accounting suggests that there's monies still available from the federal funds, then it'll be used to replace it.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, thanks. We'll now turn to board business. We'll start with the minutes followed by committee business. The minutes of the May joint meeting and minutes from each of the committees have been distributed to all members. Are there any corrections or omissions? Commissioner Albert? If not, I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second. I sent you the corrections, so please, as amended.
And those will be made. Do I have a second? Great. All in favor? Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Thank you all. Next, I'm going to call on Sarah Feinberg to deliver a report with respect to New York City Transit and MTA bus. Sarah.
Thanks, Pat. I'll hit a variety of issues quickly and then take questions. First of all, on ridership, I think most folks know we're seeing a slow and steady uptick. It feels a little bit faster than it has over the last several months. We seem to be hitting, new post-pandemic records relatively regularly now, which has been great news. Obviously, I think the weather helps. I think the city opening up helps. Restaurants and bars, all of that helps. I think we believe that we'll continue to be slow and steady for the rest of the summer. And then we'll hopefully see a significant uptick in September for all the obvious reasons: kids going back to school, businesses reopening, companies bringing employees back. A huge thanks to Sarah Meyer and her team and Abby for the Take the Train, Take the Bus campaign, which I think has helped significantly as well. I won't repeat some of your comments on masks, but I think the fact that when people come back to the system and see that everyone is masked, that we're continuing to clean and disinfect, the system feels clean, obviously helps a lot. We continue to have mask force out in force, as you said, and I'm grateful for that as well. I want to hit on some service issues that we've been seeing. Clearly had an uptick in May, and our prediction is clearly probably an uptick in June as well in terms of service challenges. A lot of the comparisons have been going back to 2020, which I think is probably not the perfect comparison for all kinds of reasons. Obviously, when ridership was down so significantly in 2020, we, not surprisingly, had fewer issues, fewer dwell time problems on platforms, as you can imagine. But the comparison to 2019 obviously isn't perfect either, but I think it's probably a closer, more appropriate comparison. We continue to be in better shape than we were in 2019. Our on-time performance continues to be better than that point. But, we clearly recognize some of the challenges we've had in May and that we're having this month. A couple of reasons for those challenges. One is significant incidents or major incidents. Those are those incidents that tie up, a really large number of trains and are sort of what I would describe as mass delays. Some of those incidents are within our control, are preventable on our side. Maintenance issues, obviously we do everything that we can to prevent those kinds of incidents. And then, as they happen, try to respond as quickly as we possibly can to address whatever the issue is. And then some of them are not within our control. Last month, we had the incident on the A train during a morning rush at about a few minutes after 8 o'clock. That was a maintenance issue. At the exact same time, I think within a minute or two of that incident, we had a person experiencing a crisis on the Manhattan Bridge, and because of the response to that, the personnel that were on the tracks in response to that incident really prevented us from running trains in either direction for some time. So those are the ones that are less in our control. Similarly, this morning, pretty rough rush hour this morning, and I thank folks who were on the subway this morning for their patience. Another one that feels a little outside of our control, a vandal cut power at the 96th Street station, which really shut down A, B, C, and D service, and then caused significant crowding issues on the 7. So, obviously those kinds of incidents are particularly frustrating to us. We're pulling camera footage from 96th Street to see if we can determine how that all happened. But so those significant incidents certainly contribute to service issues. The second one, the second contributing factor, which I think many folks are aware of because they're seeing this in the press a lot, is the staffing issues that we're having, crew shortage issues. Look, I think we all knew that this was coming. Every transit agency in history, when you go through a hiring freeze for whatever reason, and certainly this one made a lot of sense based on the pandemic and the significant financial crisis that we were experiencing. But it's difficult to recover from them. It's difficult to dig out. And, as much as we're experiencing crew shortages, so are the airlines. The national news has been full of headlines the last couple of days about pilot shortages because it's these airlines furloughed pilots and are retraining them as they come back and are having to hire a lot of new pilots. So I think it's not specific to MTA, but it's certainly an issue that we're concerned about and that we're certainly seeing the impacts from. As I said, this was a predictable consequence of the hiring freeze. And so we are not just reacting to it now. For some time, we've been hiring as quickly as we can. The operational hires we've been making actually started prior to the freeze for the rest of the agency being lifted. So for some time, we've been hiring as quickly as we can. I do think that we will be helped significantly by the lifting of the pandemic restrictions. It means that our training class sizes can be a little bit bigger, and we can be a little more flexible there, which I think will help us really significantly. But it's a challenge that, and the pain point is not only in service delivery. The hiring freeze means there are fewer people across the board who can respond to incidents and maintenance issues, operate work trains, operate vacuum trains, do inspections. It also means we've been hit hard in the HR department, which is the engine that really keeps all of our hiring going. So, I want to set expectations that, this is not going to be something that we dig out of quickly, but that we are doing everything that we can to make sure that we are hiring and training as quickly as we possibly can to bring people back on board, to bring new people on board, and to address these shortages. Obviously, one of the things we're focused on is trying to squeeze the hiring process down as much as we can. But what we're never going to do is cut corners on training or safety. That's just not negotiable. So those are the main issues on service. I wanted to turn to crime for a moment. Mostly was able to talk about that in my comments about Chief O'Reilly. Again, we're seeing a significant improvement in the numbers over the last couple of weeks, which obviously haven't been shared publicly because we're still in June. But the significant increase in police presence, I think, has made a real impact. I think the uptick in ridership helps a bit too, but the numbers seem to be linked for now, at least to the increase in policing. And obviously, as more and more riders come back, and as the city continues to open up, and as ridership really increases, I think we're going to continue to be in a better place. Continue to have concerns, obviously, about those experiencing a mental health crisis in the system and those struggling with substance abuse in the system. Ongoing conversations with the city on those issues, and really good work that's happened between both teams on the 311 front. We're incredibly grateful to the city for that as well. An update on cameras. The progress on installing cameras across the system continues. I can't say enough about the station maintenance teams and the security teams for how quickly and efficiently they've been working on surveying stations to make sure that they're placing cameras in the right locations and then getting them installed. I just looked at the update that I get each morning on how we're doing on cameras, and I just glanced at it quickly, but I think we've installed more than 150 cameras just this month. So just in the last 3 weeks. So huge kudos to that team. And, I continue to want us to be able to have cameras in every station by the end of the summer. And I think that we'll hit that goal. Paratransit, which I want to hit on briefly. Ridership is up significantly on paratransit. I think we're at about 80% ridership. We continue to not do shared rides. The TLC order on shared rides remains in place. That's something that we've seen other cities and other agencies have lifted and started doing shared rides again. But we're going to obviously wait and work with the TLC on that. As an update to last month, we're somewhat limited in what we can say here, given the fact that we're in court. But I did want to provide some sort of update. We continue to wait for the judge to rule on the temporary restraining order that is in court at this moment. We're obviously eager for the judge to act on that item so we can better respond to some of the comments that we're getting from our paratransit customers. But we remain somewhat limited in our ability to act here, given the state of play with the TRO. So we're hopeful that the judge will rule as soon as possible. And we've obviously communicated to the judge our sensitivity about wanting to move as quickly as possible. And then before I close, I want to turn my microphone over to Sarah Meyer, our VP for customer service, for an exciting announcement that was just made this morning. So Sarah, why don't you take it over for a moment?
Sure, thanks, Sarah. So I'm thrilled to announce that this morning the MTA and our friends and partners at Work & Company won the Gold Lion at Cannes this morning for the live map, the live digital subway map. That's available at map.mta.info. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Cannes Awards, it's basically like the Oscars for web applications and customer communication. So this is a really big deal, and really just wanted to send my thanks to Work & Company, who donated this product to us, as well as the partnership and the Transit Innovation Partnership, the Partnership for New York. So Kathy Wild, Rachel Hout, and of course my team here at New York City Transit wanted to thank Josh Gee, and a lot of people who've been making the data work better for modern applications. So a big thanks to the team and congratulations.
That's great news. Congratulations, Sarah, and the whole team.
Thanks, Sarah. I did not know what a Cannes Gold Lion Award was either, but anytime you're winning like the Oscar of web applications, that's impressive. So it's a beautiful map, and it's just a delightful experience. So I hope that people are using it. That's all I have, Pat. Obviously happy to take questions.
Thank you. Before I call on Commissioner Jones, I'll just note that, as I understand it, there's a red carpet, walk on the red carpet involved. Commissioner Jones.
This is just informational to Sarah. How long does it take after we hire an operator of bus and train to actually train them? How many months does it require?
It depends. And Demetrius Critchlow is on and can jump in here too and correct me if I'm wrong or provide more information. But a conductor, for example, is about 3 months, and a train operator is, I think, 8 months, might be 7 months. So there's a significant period of time there where we've got to train folks. And obviously, not every person who enters the training class, passes. Some folks don't make it. So it's, if you've got 50 people in a class, you don't always end up with 50 conductors. Dimitri, did you want to add anything?
Problem we have will not turn around instantly. I think you've referred to the fact that there's going to be a lag time before we can actually get full personnel. Okay.
That's exactly right.
Thank you.
And again, sorry, I was just going to say one thing. In response to Commissioner Jones. And again, I think the good news here is that no one at New York City Transit, woke up last week and realized that, we had a staffing issue and that we were going to have to start bringing people on. So this has been in the works for months, and I'm really grateful to the team for all the work that they've been done. But you hit on the exact issue, which is that, you don't hire someone on a Monday and put them in a train cab on a Tuesday. There's a significant amount of training.
Thanks, Sarah. Commissioner Albert.
Yeah, Sarah, on those occasions when the service is reduced due to the staffing shortages that we've all seen and that you were talking about, is there a message that goes out on the electronic billboards, or are you just supposed to observe the countdown clock and see the increased wait times? Because I think getting the message out that this is a staffing issue, but this isn't the normal schedule, might be a good thing for riders to know.
Yeah, we've been communicating with riders, on Twitter. I don't know, Sarah's on and can say more. I don't know if we've been actually putting it proactively on the message boards, but we are trying to help people plan. And, you've probably seen us over the last week or 10 days or so really talk about this staffing issue. This is not something that we're trying to hide. We're trying to be very transparent about it so that people understand what we're going through and how we're trying to address this issue. We're also trying to, in real time, make sure that the service is impacted as little as possible. So, the great men and women at New York City Transit and in the RCC are doing things like trying to, shift headways a little bit so that they can respond to abandonments, as opposed to just, instead of, waiting 7 minutes for your train, you're suddenly waiting 15 because, we couldn't make a crew for one train, and therefore, we're piling up on the platform. So they're trying to remain really flexible there too.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Commissioner Polisi.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, Sarah. How are you?
Let's just let Sarah Meyer talk for 1 second. She was going to add to something I was saying. Yep.
Right. So Commissioner Albert, we are using our digital screens. We're not using our countdown clocks as much. That might be a good suggestion. So thank you for that. I think the delays that warrant messaging, we're certainly on top of that and want to make sure our riders understand why. So thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. Sarah, a few questions. Number one is I did see in the board book that you were talking about the extension of the pilot program through December, so thank you for that. Number two is I know there's been a lot of people struggling to get e-Hel for on-demand, and I'm wondering if there's anything we can do in the contract, any levers we can pull to push the contractor to provide better service. And then I do have a question on bathrooms. Yesterday, unfortunately, I had to enter an elevator at Chambers Street, and someone used it as a bathroom. And unfortunately, as many wheelchair users do, we have to get down. So unfortunately, I had to roll through it. And Sarah Meyer was quick on getting someone to kind of wipe everything up. So I want to thank her and the crew that actually did that as well. And if there's going to be anything opening for those bathrooms, so.
Okay, so why don't I take the bathroom question first, and then I'll go to e-Hel, and then I want to turn it to Craig because he can speak to this as well. So on the obviously very sorry that you went through that yesterday in the system. I went through something similar myself while negotiating with a stroller, and it's extremely unpleasant and very difficult to explain and understand. Look, we would like to open the restrooms as quickly as possible. We are having an internal debate at the moment, not a debate, we're having an internal conversation at the moment about the best way to go about reopening those restrooms and how we should open them or how they should be used going forward. Part of the issue is even pre-pandemic, we were seeing significant issues in many of our restrooms involving vandalism, substance abuse, folks, attempting to, live there for a couple of days. Really challenging issues that, I don't want to put a lock on the door. I don't want to require someone to have to get a key. I don't want to, go through these other machinations that other agencies do and that other, businesses do. But we also want to make sure that if we're providing access to restrooms, that it's really in a safe way, in a safe manner. We don't necessarily see a correlation always between soiled elevators and soiled train cars and restrooms being open. I think in many cases what we're dealing with there is not, someone who, the restroom upstairs or in a very different part of the station isn't open, therefore I have no choice but to go here. What we found is it tends to be a mental illness issue. But probably, to the extent that we can understand it more, I'd like to. And we can certainly keep you posted on and welcome you to those conversations that we're having internally as well, because it's a difficult challenge to figure out how to muddle through here. So that's restrooms. On paratransit, you're right. We are seeing an uptick in concerns and complaints from customers for good reason. This is, I think very much related to the fact that our vendors have been unable to bring on drivers. I'll let Craig say more, but I think one of our vendors has even offered like a multi-$1,000 signing bonus to come on and be a driver, and they're just not getting enough drivers. And so it's extremely challenging at the moment. Obviously, one thing that will help is shared rides, but we're very, we don't want to do that until it's the right thing to do for our customers and until the TLC has made some decisions there too. So, Craig, did you want to add to what I've said?
Sure, Sarah, thanks. Just to clarify, I think Commissioner Khaleesi, you were asking specifically about the e-Hel, if I heard your question.
That is correct, correct.
Yeah, so similar to what Sarah said, we recognize that our customers have been having some challenges in the e-Hel program. And some of it is caught up with the TRO with Curb. As you know, Curb is one of our vendors. Per guidance that we've gotten, we really can't take any specific actions at this point, but we are strategizing behind the scenes in regards to potential actions we could take quickly once we get resolution of the TRO. And just another piece of this, which I want to share, as you know, Commissioner Khaleesi, that program is a non-ADA program. So, which means basically our customers are availing themselves of the general, TLC, TNC offering that's out on the street. And unfortunately, in working with our colleagues at TLC, they're also having the same issues that, many industries, including ourselves, are having, meaning, pre-pandemic, there was something in the neighborhood of 13,000 vehicles that customers could avail themselves of. Today, we're understanding it's less than 4,000. So it's a general industry issue. But again, with that said, we are strategizing. We hope to be able to do something to resolve this as soon as we can move ahead.
Thank you.
Sure, Commissioner.
Thank you, Pat. First, it is really good to be back. I was thinking this morning as I was putting on my suit and tie for first in a long, long time. This is actually my 25th board meeting, the 2-year anniversary. And the sort of extraordinary that 15, I think you mentioned, have been virtual of that. So the vast majority have been virtual. What an extraordinary item. But being back in person, I did want to express appreciation for lots of things, and I understand I'll have a chance again next month to talk to that, Pat, but the incredible work you did with JANO on the $14.5 billion federal assistance, the extraordinary work at the Transit Authority and on the rails, and the workers operating through this crisis, I wanted to, in person, say thank you. For all that work, and it's amazing that we're here, and as you say, able to sit in person to begin the process. I'm also very happy to express appreciation for what I hear is the much better coordination and communication between the TA, the MTA, and the NYPD. There was some rough discussion last meeting. I am happy that people have started communicating more effectively, and we're seeing numbers coming down, which is, I think, terrific. I do believe, based on what the reports that, Sarah, you've made, what the board books have said, that the TA, the Transit Authority, faces some fundamentally important challenges as we head into the hot summer weather, and as we head into what is likely to be a very substantial expansion of ridership in the fall, which we all hope for. But the cancellation of trains, the shortage of workers, the increasing incidents, the IG reports on inspections and credit cards, the challenge of cyber attacks, the lengthy delays in car delivery, technology problems, paratransit, and the disability community issues. These are all things that I think we need to be paying a lot of attention to. And I'm not saying you're not, but I think we all need to together be paying attention, because it sounds like the future may, before too long, start reminding us of the past. And I think we desperately need a return to robust board and public oversight of what we do. We need fully open board meetings. I think this is a good beginning today, but I think we should fully open going forward, and I am advocating open and public committee meetings as well. I think that we should get them going. I think that it is useful having these conversations with the public amongst us, and getting their comments. And I'm looking forward to, both in committees and the board, of a review of the service metrics and discussing detailed plans and strategy to avoid falling back into the crisis of the past. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner. Anybody else?
I do call for open board meetings as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. I'm going to turn to Jano Lieber for C&D procurement items from the New York City Transit Committee. Jano.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your kind words earlier, and good morning, board members. Construction and Development has 5 procurement actions totaling $30.6 million being brought through the Transit and Bus Committee this month. There are 3 of these that are ratification items. The first concerns, the first item requests board ratification of a modification to a contract for replacement of fiber optic signal cables on the Jamaica and Myrtle Avenue lines with EJ Electric. The mod is for a replacement of approximately 6,400 feet of cable trays at 12 stations on the Jamaica Avenue line. While performing pre-construction investigations, the contractor and the project team uncovered that the condition of the existing cable trays had deteriorated to the point where they could no longer be relied upon to carry the intended new fiber optic signal cables and therefore needed to be replaced. So that is the genesis of this request for a modification of $2.9 million. Second, C&D is requesting that the board ratify 2 modifications for a long-standing contract with Sistra for technical and construction oversight support for the CBTC AWS signal system on the Queens Boulevard line. This mod is to allow for additional technical support and construction oversight services in the amount of approximately $4.8 million. And this action will also extend the term of this Sistra contract by an additional 4 months. The technical expertise and support provided by Sistra in connection with the CBTC system integration, with ATS expansion to the entire B division, and in terms of support for the train operator simulator, were critical to the ability of the pre-existing NYC Transit CPM capital program management team's ability to support these major initiatives. For that reason, Sistra was directed by the staff on the signals and train control team at New York City Transit CPM to begin working on all these initiatives, but a modification for this work, which was in excess of the original contract amount, was not timely processed. And I have to say, I want to be direct, this was a screw-up. Several years ago, the contract amount was, as I said, exceeded, but action was not promptly taken to increase that amount. So we're correcting it, we're proposing to correct it with this action. The work was performed. It was performed effectively in support of, as I said, the Queens Boulevard line project, which, you know, my group has over the last year taken over. But the Signals Program Office has been re-instructed on the importance of timely processing and approval of contract modifications. So I want to be direct about how this came about. The final 2 procurement actions this month request the board's approval to modify 2 ultra-wideband proof of concept contracts to establish interoperability between the 2 ultra-wideband train communication systems. And I'm going to ask Chief Innovation Officer Mark Dowd, who's here with me today, to give you a briefing on these 2 contracts and the mods you have in front of you. Mark?
Thank you, Jano. Good morning. I'm excited to introduce a new technology as part of this procurement. Rail signaling is a system used to direct rail traffic and keep trains always clear of each other. Communications-based train control, or CPTC, is a rail signaling system that makes use of telecommunications between the train and track equipment for traffic management, infrastructure control. CPTC provides the exact positioning of the train more accurately than traditional signaling systems. This results in a more efficient and safe way to manage rail traffic. All CPTC suppliers are required to be interoperable with each other. The new technology, commonly referred to as UWB, ultra-wideband, is a wireless protocol for communications which functions using radio waves. At its most basic, it can be used to transmit messages between devices, making it somewhat analogous to Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. The main feature it enables is a highly accurate location tracking, with devices using UWB potentially able to identify distances and even the location of other hardware relative to itself within a few inches. An example of how UWB chips are now mainstream technology is their use in Apple phones and other devices. MTA is the first transit agency in the world to use UWB for positioning and navigation for CBTC signaling. As a result of the signaling challenge, UWB was piloted by 2 startup technology companies in our system.
on the Flushing line and the Canarsie line. These two startups, Humatics out of MIT and Piper out of California, piloted the UWB with two established CBTC suppliers, Siemens and Thales. In March 2020, the pilot was successful in establishing the effectiveness of UWB as part of the CBTC signaling for positioning and navigation. Consistent with the requirements of interoperability, MTA is now requiring the Humatics and Piper to work together to design a radio based on a single chip that is commercially available to any UWB suppliers. The MTA is modifying the pilot contracts to require two UWB suppliers and two CBTC suppliers to work together to develop an interoperable UWB radios based on a standard microchip produced by Qorvo that can be integrated into the CBTC system. We expect this to be completed in no more than 14.5 months, allowing interoperability UWB technology to be used for train positioning and navigation in future CBTC projects. The Qorvo microchip was selected as a standard chip for MTA's UWB because of its wide commercial availability. To that end, we have two procurement items this month for the board's approval, which will modify the ultra-wideband pilot contracts with Siemens Humatics and Thales Piper. These modifications to the Siemens Humatics contract require Siemens and Humatics to redesign, manufacture, and test the UWB radio incorporating the Qorvo chip. The modification to the Thales Piper contract requires those two companies to actively support Siemens Humatics in the development of the redesigned Humatics UWB radio, and further to work with Siemens Humatics to finalize a common UWB communications protocol establishing full UWB interoperability between the two UWB systems. The cost of the modification for Siemens is $14.1 million and $8.7 million for the Thales contract. The costs are consistent with the relative amount of work the contracts are expected to perform under these modifications. As part of our due diligence, we uncovered that the subcontractor Piper was cited by the New York State Workers' Compensation Board for noncompliance. Piper was unaware of this issue and related debarment until we caught it. We understand that the Piper successfully disputed the issue and has been notified by the Workers' Comp Board and advised that the disbarment will be lifted by Friday. MTA C&D will not award these modifications until the debarment is lifted. As a final note, we are excited to enter into the next phase of this project, where we will be leading the world in bringing new technology that will make it safer and more efficient for our customers to ride the subway. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for all your work, which has been long-standing on this UWB initiative. It's made a huge difference.
Hey, Jana, it's Kevin. For the non-engineers on the call like myself, does this technology have anything related to PTC that we've just been dealing with over the last 2 years? Because that was supposed to enhance communications with trains, or is it totally different technology and a different purpose?
So it's a part of a technology suite, right? So there's a suite of technologies that go into CBTC. UWB is positioning the location. We're trying it out there. There is a potential application to other places, which is one of the reasons why we really like UWB, whether it's worker safety, whether it's PTC or other places. But the first place we're going to try to work through it is as part of a safety certified CBTC system.
Thanks.
I would just say that I've seen it demonstrated and it's amazing. It knows when you're too close to the next train. It knows when there's a person or a rat on the tracks. It can distinguish it. It can be incorporated at a fraction of the cost of CBTC. It works along with CBTC, but we are going to be very much in a better place once we install this.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And I've enlisted my colleague, Mr. Albert, on the rat location positioning element of the effort. So thank you for that, Andrew. If there are no other questions, I submit these 5 procurement actions to the board for approval.
Thanks, Jano. I'll make a motion to approve the procurements. Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Thanks. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? The procurements carry. Thanks, Jano. Jano is now going to provide an update on C&D and Capital Program Oversight Committee.
Thanks again, Pat. Okay, good morning again. This month's focus at the CPOC board is the rolling stock and Omni. Neither of these are C&D initiatives per se, but both are critically important, and there are materials in the board book. Rolling stock is especially important as part of the capital program, as the board is aware. New vehicles improve service reliability. The train cars we purchased in the last 20 years are 2.5 times more reliable than our older fleet. And they also include enhanced accessibility features, hugely important to this broader initiative we are all pushing forward on. We reported to you in January on our overall rolling stock strategy for the year, which is really being shaped by the need to support ridership return as well as by funding realities. In the CPOC book, you'll see reports on existing rolling stock procurements for bus, subway, and rail, and of course, the IEC is available to answer any questions that may prompt. I mentioned to you last month that we had made real progress on the East Side Access Project and that the facility was looking like a proper railroad terminal. In fact, late last month, as you might have seen in the news, Governor Cuomo announced the completion of major construction on the project, major civil construction especially, and we had the opportunity to take him and the press on a tour to see the progress we've made. A few board members were able to join, including Commissioner Mujica and Commissioner Glucksman. For the other members of the board, we've organized two more tour dates, July 2nd and July 23rd, and we'd very much like all the board members to join if it's convenient. Please let us know. Important work remains on the East Side Access Project, notably the testing and commissioning of major systems and training and activation work by Long Island Railroad. But we're still driving to complete this project by the end of next year. Lastly, as folks are aware, we're working with our partners in labor to figure out how the station will be operated day to day. More to come soon on that. As part of the third track Long Island Railroad expansion project, we improved the Floral Park station with 3 new elevators, making the station fully ADA accessible. And we held an event last month about that. The project cost $10 million. Why? Because the elevators were built not within the station, not within the complex existing structure like we face in the subways, but outside it, as you can see in the photo. And because there were really no utilities to relocate. Thanks to Chief Accessibility Officer Cumel Arroyo, Q, for joining us on that day, and for visiting several stations and grade crossings along the main line to review the accessibility elements of the third track project. Note, this weekend we'll be having a double track outage to push a tunnel under the Oyster Bay branch tracks in Mineola, and then in July we'll be doing a similar tunnel push in Mineola, this time under the Port Jeff branch. So that's a note in terms of ridership impacts. But relatedly, I wanted to note that after recent double track outages, we got feedback from our friends at Passengers United, who comments frequently in the public comment section of this meeting, and from others asking us to provide overnight busing options where Long Island Railroad service was out. We did that, and it seems to have worked and made a difference, and we're going to continue doing that and monitoring the usage. Another ADA development. We also opened 3 new elevators at the 57th Street subway station on the N, Q, R, and W lines, making it fully ADA accessible. Thank you to Q and to Commissioner Khaleesi for joining us. But that was a very different project from the Floral Park project. Much more complicated because of the street level traffic implications, literally the structural proximity to Carnegie Hall, which is obviously a big issue. But perhaps most significantly, utility work, which included relocating and upgrading 500 feet of 135-year-old Con Edison gas lines, 72 Empire City subway conduits, 100 feet of 12-inch water main, and 100 feet of Con Edison steam line, as well as reconstructing 3 or 4 Con Ed manholes. I mention all of this because it highlights the difference between doing elevator installation in ADA projects in our existing physically antiquated subway system versus what you saw in Floral Park, where we were able to attach it to an existing elevator structure. And it obviously is something we need to bear in mind as we manage the cost implications of the ADA program. Speaking of utility work, the East End Gateway project, that's the improvement, the widening and the expansion and refinishing of the major Long Island Railroad concourse at Penn Station between 7th and 8th Avenue. The East End Gateway project continues with some unglamorous but incredibly important and complicated utility relocation under 7th Avenue. As you see in the right, I'll talk a little about it. The project involves raising the ceiling of that incredibly important Long Island Railroad concourse up to a more uniform 18-foot height. Part of how we're getting to achieve that height is by right-sizing two huge utility boxes, which are under the street level, under the 33rd Street, one of which contain only two active water and gas lines. So we're taking back 100,000 cubic feet of underused space that's going to allow us to create a much better customer environment down below with a higher ceiling. These are just some of the milestones we've achieved this month, and there are more. As Lisa Daglian mentioned in her testimony, we had the Penn Access public meeting after the federal government gave us the environmental go-ahead, and we're still collecting comments, but the comments to date have been almost uniformly extremely supportive of the project. So that is significant progress for a project we all care a lot about. And the zoning for accessibility proposal that we've been advancing in tandem with the city planning, the Department of City Planning of the city, is also moving forward. In fact, city planning is having a hearing on it this very month, and I again want to acknowledge Commissioner Khaleesi and Q's leadership and support for that effort. More broadly, we're working closely with CFO Bob Foran, and we've upped our goal of awarding $6.2 billion of projects this year by at least $1 billion. But although there are strong headwinds, and I talked a little bit about it with some of you, that we're facing, some of them have to do with staffing issues, in some ways not dissimilar to what Sarah's talked about with respect to transit, but the market's ability to, both in terms of supply chain for equipment and materials and the cost structure of materials, continues to be impacted by COVID. So we're working in a market that is still recovering from this very, very difficult year. But we are actually increasing our goal for this year. And again, I want to acknowledge Bob and his team's support for the capital program, putting Humpty Dumpty back together again and really juicing the capital program. So thank you, Bob. And finally, I just want to acknowledge the C&D, the construction development team, which has now come back to the office on a 50% full AB scheme. 50% of the team is in the office every day. That was starting June 7th. Our team is almost 80% vaccinated, and the folks who had been working intensely during COVID were ready to start to get back together to do the planning and the management of the jobs face to face. So I want to acknowledge their tremendous work and commitment, which continues right through their return to work. So that I can take any comments, but that's the end of my report, Pat.
Thanks, Jano. Questions or comments for Jano? Commissioner Khaleesi.
Thank you, Chairman. Jano, you always tie some good stuff together as built environment and accessibility, so you're always on my good side here. So thanks for that, and thanks for acknowledging the work that we do to make things accessible, and more importantly, I want to thank the crews for making this accessibility happen. So very exciting to see Floral Park. I have a sled hockey buddy in Floral Park who's an Islander fan. I'm a Ranger fan. Now we can go back and forth and see games together. So that's really important. And you can see the stark comparison of putting it at 50th Street and putting it in Floral Park. Totally two different environments. So zoning for accessibility needs to pass. I'm encouraging people to support that, advocates and everybody. So let's get that through. It's really important to get things done. I know that Bob mentioned something earlier that we didn't need any more capital dollars here, so I'm for the capital plan. So that leads me to ask, for congestion pricing, sorry. It leads me to ask, how much more money do we need for the 2024 capital plan to commit to the full 70?
Well, again, we are committed to doing the full 54.5 capital program, including bridges and tunnels. I'd say the risk element of this is the fact that MTA is to provide $9.8 billion of funding from our own resources at the end of the capital program. So again, the capital program will be funded first with lockbox monies, which we do have, and we're going to make that available. Then it's going to be the congestion pricing money. There's also going to be contributions from the state and from the city, a total of $6 billion. But the back end of the planned funding is $9.8 billion from the MTA. And the reason I say that's at risk is we don't know what the future holds. We are looking at significant deficits in the out years. We have to address them. But we have a plan to try to get there and move forward with the funding. But again, that's at the back end of the capital program, and we have time to address it.
So before I call, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
And so we're going to get to the 70, so we're committing to the 70 per funding?
I will leave that to Jano to talk about the commitments of individual elements. But in terms of funding the total program, that's the goal and that's the objective.
Thank you.
I think you know, we've continued to press forward with ADA projects aggressively, even in the, the financially constrained environment. Even when we were totally dependent only on federal funding, we continued to advance ADA projects. So we're moving forward. Although, there is uncertainty at the back end, as Bob has articulated, both with respect to when congestion pricing will show up and that last roughly $10 billion of MTA bonds. But we're continuing to press forward, and you and I have worked together a lot on that.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm here to support that any way that I can.
So, Commissioner Khaleesi, before I call on Commissioner Brinkman and Commissioner Zuckerman, I just want to note that your Islander friend gets to see hockey in the month of June. Commissioner Brinkman.
Yes, Jano, with the Port Authority now pausing the LaGuardia Air Train, is there any possibility that we could move forward with making the Willets Point station handicapped accessible at this time?
Yeah, Commissioner, I would say this: the Port Authority has not paused that project. There's additional review underway at the FAA, which is the lead agency responsible for that, and we're working closely with the Port Authority on all these issues.
And just to Pat's point, that the station that was being designed in tandem with the Port Authority, which would be the Willets Point Long Island Railroad Station, was intended to be fully handicapped accessible. So I want to reassure you on that.
Okay, no, it's just I know I'm new to the board, but it's sort of an embarrassment that we live in the greatest city in the world, and yet where we have Citi Field and we have the National Tennis Center, we have a station that's not handicap accessible. And every time we brought this up, I brought this up back my first term as the Commuter Council chairman back between 2006 and 2010, and it was like, well, yeah, we'll get to it. And here we are like 11, 12 years later, and it's still not handicap accessible. And it seems like there's one excuse after the other. So any way we can push the Port Authority, or at least get their plans on how they're developing it, so we can put some elevators in there. Again, it's just something I think is way, way long overdue.
Commissioner, the Port Authority and the MTA agree, and a key component, as Jano mentioned, of the air train at LaGuardia is accessibility at the Met's Willets Point station, which is desperately needed.
Chairman, can I say something?
Commissioner.
As far as language goes, if we can just stay away from the H word and just use accessible. Thank you.
Commissioner Zuckerman.
Thanks. Pat, I will say I'm going to really miss your humor as COVID is subsiding and you see the light at the end of the tunnel. You are getting funnier and funnier in every meeting. So I applaud that. My comment is a relatively narrow one, and unfortunately, given our structure now, this is the only place to really raise these issues. But it's not even an issue. Just want to note, as you were saying, Bob, and I'm thrilled about the funding of the capital plan, but in our relatively small county of Putnam, we have, as you recall, and it's sometimes hard to even remember, some very small but important to us items in that capital plan, including the Southeast Station, and the Garrison Station, which is crumbling each day as I walk by it. And so I would love, Jano, in both your old job and now in your new job, and congratulations, Jano. I hope that sails through swimmingly through the Senate, and I'm sure it will. But I would love to talk to you and understand where, in fact, those projects are during the next few years in the capital planning, whether they're in the early stage or the later stage. I want to know when they're going on the plan, whether they're going to be part of Bob's early funding or his future less than clear funding. I'd like to know when those plans are coming to fruition specifically.
Happy to do it. I mean, just more broadly, responding broadly, because I don't have a specific response.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting we debate it now. I don't need to know it's June 15, 2022.
Sure, we'll do it. I'll be back with you.
Anybody else for Jano? Okay, good. I'm going to call on Kathy Rinaldi for a report on Metro North. Kathy.
Excuse me. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Board. I just have a few remarks this morning. First, as the Chairman mentioned at the top of the meeting, Metro North added train service this past Monday, June 21st. We added 24 new peak trains on the Hudson, Harlem, and New Haven lines, which brings service to 67% of pre-pandemic levels. This service increase comes as the region continues its reopening and Metro North continues to welcome back more riders to the railroad. I'm happy to report that last Friday, June 18th, we set a pandemic ridership record with approximately 104,000 trips taken, which is the first time we've surpassed 100,000 riders since the beginning of the pandemic. We've increased service to meet the demand that we're seeing, and we couldn't be happier to be welcoming so many of our customers back. A more significant service change, which will increase service levels to 83% of pre-pandemic levels during the week and 70% of pre-COVID levels on the weekends, will take place on August 29th, just in time for Labor Day. On ridership specifically, we're now seeing between 36 and 40% of our pre-COVID ridership during the week, and really very, very strong ridership on the weekends. Last Saturday, our ridership was 68.6 of a pre-COVID Saturday, and our Sunday ridership on Father's Day was actually 75.5% of a pre-COVID Sunday. So we're actually very, very happy to see those kinds of riders come back on the weekends. With respect to service delivery, as our ridership has steadily risen over the course of this spring and into the summer, our service delivery has actually continued to be relatively strong. Year to date by line, our OTP is as follows: 98.7% on the Hudson line, 98.7% on the Harlem line, 97% on the New Haven line, with a total system-wide OTP of 97%. Our west of Hudson service also continues strong, above goal at 95.9%, with year-to-date at 94.0%. That said, however, despite these strong OTP numbers, we have had a few service delivery issues on the Harlem and New Haven lines that I'd like to address in greater detail. First, on the Harlem line. Throughout the pandemic, Metro North crews have been advancing critical infrastructure work while operating the reduced schedule, since the impacts on our train service and our customers are not as significant. Currently, Metro North crews are working on the Harlem line to replace track switches just north of Hartsdale Station. When this project is completed in early August, it will improve train reliability through that area. By advancing and accelerating this project at this point in time, train service between Scarsdale and North White Plains is reduced to one track in both directions for the duration of the project, as opposed to doing this work on weekends only. Since we're doing this work during the week, this decreases overall nighttime work as well as the duration of the project from approximately 20 weeks to approximately 12 weeks. In parallel, at the same time, we're conducting cyclical tie replacement work between North White Plains and Pleasantville, and that work is expected to continue for much of the summer. The fact that we have tracks of service out of service for these two major projects in this area exacerbates the impact of service issues that we experience on the Harlem line. As examples, we experienced signal issues on the Harlem line over the weekend of June 5th because of a failure of the power supply to a non-vital microprocessor in a signal hut, and on the evenings of June 7th and June 8th because of flash flooding caused by severe evening thunderstorms. These all resulted in delays to our Harlem line customers. With respect to our New Haven line service, in last month's update on PTC, I reported that PTC maintenance continues as we monitor reliability and safety, as well as implement system software updates to make operational improvements and correct variances on the New Haven line. We expect a software release shortly for deployment on our M8 electric fleet over the summer, and this will substantially improve our New Haven line service as more of the fleet gets the new software. I want to acknowledge that all of this has had an impact on our service delivery. And as both of these infrastructure improvements on the Harlem line, as well as the software update on the New Haven line are completed, we expect to see a significant improvement in the reliability of our train service. Turning next to summer Saturdays, to recognize our monthly ticket holders and to encourage even more ridership on weekends over the summer, Metro North will be joining Long Island Railroad and bringing back their Summer Saturdays program, which Long Island first launched in 2018. Through this program, Metro North for the first time will be honoring all monthly tickets for travel to and from Metro North stations, regardless of what stations are printed on the ticket. As Phil will mention in his remarks, monthly ticket holders traveling Saturdays between July 3rd and August 28th will be able to bring up to 4 additional friends or family members for only $1 per person each way. This program offers a great way for our customers to explore the Hudson Valley and New York City with family and friends as the region continues to reopen. As ridership continues to return, we've also resumed our Station Talks program so that our customers have the opportunity to meet with our district managers and provide feedback. So far this spring and summer, we've met with customers at White Plains, Fordham, and West Haven stations, and we've received positive feedback on the cleaning of our trains and stations. In addition, over the past couple weeks, we've introduced our capacity tracker on our New Haven Line M8 fleet. New Haven Line customers can now see the amount of space available on each car of an approaching train by looking at the digital signs on platforms 5 minutes before a train arrives or by using our Metro North Train Time app at any time. Last November, as you'll recall, this technology was launched on our M7 fleet, which serves the Harlem and the Hudson lines. I'm excited that so many more Metro North customers are now able to use this technology. And as riders continue to return to Metro North, this makes it even easier for our customers to plan their ride. I want to thank all of the hardworking Metro North and MTA IT employees for their work on this transformative project. I'd now like to provide an update on our Way Ahead strategic plan, which we launched in the fall of 2018 with a focus on 3 priorities: our customers, our people, and our infrastructure. Over the past 2.5 years, we've accomplished a lot, and our committee work plan has included regular updates on our progress. The world has changed significantly since the pandemic, and we want to respond to where we find ourselves today. So I'm pleased to announce that we're going to be comprehensively updating this plan, and we're calling it Way Ahead Moving Forward. As the region begins to reopen, we've taken a hard look at what it will take for us to recover and help the region recover. We've updated our strategies in each of our priority areas to respond to these new challenges, and we're ready to adapt to whatever the new normal becomes. We're focusing on the changing needs of our railroad and region as we recover from the pandemic and as we adjust to structural shifts in people's work and transportation patterns. After today's meeting, I'll be sending the Metro North Long Island Railroad Committee members an electronic copy of this updated plan and a link to our updated website. And once we're back to our normal meeting format, I'll be happy to take Metro North Committee members through this more in depth and answer any questions that they may have. Finally, I would like to conclude with a few personnel announcements. Sue Doring, Metro North's Executive Vice President, is retiring from Metro North tomorrow. Sue is a graduate of MTA's Future Managers Program in 1989, and from there she steadily rose through the ranks here at Metro North, serving first as a train master, then as an assistant conductor and locomotive engineer. She went on to become the district superintendent of the North White Plains and Brewster districts, line superintendent of the Hudson and Harlem Beacon lines, and then deputy chief of operations before she moved over to the customer service and stations department, where she was a vice president for 5 years. In 2018, she was promoted into the position of executive vice president. Throughout her career, Sue has used her knowledge of operations and customer service to bring multiple departments together to achieve common goals. Her knowledge of the railroad is unsurpassed, and she's brought drive, dedication, creativity, and enthusiasm to all of her work here at Metro North. Please join all of us in Metro North as wishing. Please join all of us at Metro North in wishing Sue the very best in her retirement. Finally, I'm also pleased to thank you. I'm pleased to announce also the recent promotion of Jim Heimbecker to the position of Vice President of M&E. Jim began his career with Metro North in 1990 as an electrician. He quickly rose through the ranks, holding several operational positions, and most recently served as Chief Mechanical Officer. Jim has over 30 years of experience in rolling stock, maintenance practices, and federal regulations, as well as strong leadership and team building skills. Jim will be responsible for providing leadership and direction to Metro North's mechanical department on providing safe and reliable service to our customers. Please join me in congratulating Jim on his promotion and wish him continued success at Metro North. As I close, I'd like to express how proud I am of all the railroad employees who've been continuing to pull together during one of the darkest times in our nation's history. I'm so proud of how they remain focused and we remain focused on the basics of providing safe and reliable train service for our customers. I'm thankful for the work that our frontline employees have done to keep our essential workers moving during the pandemic. And I'm so grateful for how our employees have been adapting as the railroad has changed during the pandemic and how they've been welcoming our customers back. Thank you all. We have no procurements or action items this month, and this concludes my reports.
Kathy, thanks for the comprehensive update. Any questions or comments for Kathy? All right, terrific. Let's hear from Phil Lang on the Long Island Railroad. Phil.
Thank you, Pat, and good afternoon, everyone. Last year, we broke several records when it came to on-time performance, as well as our maintenance and state of good repair accomplishments. This year, our workforce continues to step up and deliver for our customers. As we successfully complete projects, we have new projects beginning, concurrently delivering vital train service throughout the entirety of the pandemic, a true testament to the dedication of our workforce and our managers. Lynbrook and Rockville Center viaduct repairs are great examples of recently completed work, vital to restoring and ensuring long-term stability of these two structures that carry trains on the Babylon branch. Not only did we address the viaducts below, but we tackled the root cause of the deterioration, addressing drainage and water runoff above. I'm proud that we delivered on these commitments, given that they fulfill our goals to improve safety, reliability, but they also result in less operating costs as we avoid and minimize costs associated with demand maintenance and responses. And this work was accomplished utilizing 3 small business mentor contractors, including Zion, a local Lynbrook contractor, who all worked alongside Long Island Railroad forces to successfully deliver these projects. Upcoming this weekend, June 26th, 27th, mainline service will be suspended for the Willis Avenue grade crossing elimination on the Oyster Bay branch, as Jano had noted earlier, and on July 10th and 11th for the grade crossing elimination of Willis Avenue along the mainline branch. I'm also happy to report that the contractor will again support these outages and now provide overnight bus service along the main line. And also coming this weekend on the Port Washington branch to prep for another section of critical concrete tie installations. We will be going from half hourly to hourly. This project will run from July 5th to August 29th. And we've been successfully accomplishing concrete tie installations across the system at a faster, more efficient, and more cost-effective pace than in recent years, utilizing continuous track outages. And this one section is special because when this last phase of work is complete, the Port Washington branch will be fully reconstructed and be Long Island Railroad's first all-concrete tie branch. This is huge for us and for our riders as it delivers both safety and long-term reliability. During this work, there'll be no changes to peak service. However, off-peak service will be reduced from half hourly to hourly. It's critically important that we finish this work sooner rather than later, as we see ridership continue to grow and we anticipate even a stronger ridership post-Labor Day. And lastly, on the weekend of July 17th to 18th, for a 12-hour period, 1 of 2 tracks from Freeport to Wantor will be out of service while we perform state of good repair work. Montauk branch customers will see some service adjustments to support that. Additional information is in the book. And all of this work continues to fulfill our commitment, providing reliable, safe service. In May, Long Island Railroad trains operated on time at 95.8%, exceeding our goal of 94%. And this takes into account the fire in Westbury that forced the mainline shutdown, reducing on-time performance by 1.1%. This demonstrates our approach to proactively tackling issues that we can control and mitigating things that are out of our control. It's resulting in improved service for our customers. And so far for the year, we continue to outperform last year, which was our highest performance in modern day history. Our on-time metrics to date, the year to date, is 96.13%. I'm proud of our team who is constantly pushing day in and day out to provide better and better service for the public we serve. On-time performance is up and costs associated with unplanned incidents are down. It's a win-win. The railroad has never been safer and more reliable than it is today. And that goes hand in hand with returning ridership. On Memorial Day weekend, despite the wet and cold weather, people took the train to reach many destinations. It confirmed the importance of public transit. Rain or shine, people are riding the rails. On June 5th, we proudly and successfully supported service to and from the Belmont Stakes. Discretionary ridership remains strong, and we continue to see more and more people choose to take the train. Throughout the pandemic, we carried many essential workers, and most of them are monthly ticket holders. And as Kathy noted in her remarks, as an extra way to say thank you for them for their efforts and for continuing to ride the rails, helping us beat the pandemic, we are relaunching the Summer Saturday program starting July 3rd. It's our way of adding value to the monthly ticket, making it easier for folks to visit all that Long Island, New York City have to offer as destinations reopen. And here's how it works. If you have a Long Island Railroad monthly ticket, you can bring up to 4 companions of any age on board any Long Island Railroad train system-wide, and each of your guests only pays $1 each way. And this runs through August 28th. The only exception we have is, like prior summers, it's not valid on 4 Montauk trains because of capacity concerns. But there's still many great destinations that folks can get to with this offer, and we're excited to be able to bring it back. I'm also excited to announce the Meet the Managers program is being restored, a very huge successful program running continuously prior to the pandemic that allows our customers to engage with managers and staff across the system, allowing them to provide input and answer any questions that they may have. And that's particularly important now with weekday ridership consistently hovering over 40% mark of pre-pandemic levels, hitting 43% this past Monday, and weekends topping 68%. More and more customers are able to experience firsthand all the improvements we've made. Long Island Railroad has one procurement this month for a 5-year rolling stock or OEM, original equipment manufacturer purchase. This is for critical parts, components, and assemblies for major rail cars, such as HVAC and air brakes that enable Long Island Railroad, Metro-North, and New York City Transit to fulfill their maintenance programs, improving safety and reliability. This is for a 5-year term for repair parts for Knorr Brake Company, Merak, New York Air Brake, estimated at $161.9 million, of which $137.2 million is firm fixed prices. This represents the first fully consolidated price agreement incorporating the needs as required of the 3 agencies. Chairman Foy, that's all I have. Thank you very much. I present that procurement.
Phil, thanks for the report. Any questions for Phil before I make a motion to approve the procurement? All right, I'll move the procurement. Do I have a second?
Yeah, second, Pat.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Thank you. The procurement carries. I'm going to now turn to Danny DiConsenso for a report on bridges and tunnels. Danny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, everyone. Today, my comments will focus on bridges and tunnels traffic and safety trends. Total paid traffic in April was 24.9 million vehicles, an increase of 156% over April of last year, which had the lowest B&T traffic levels in decades due to the COVID-19 pandemic. While April results are still 9% lower than B&T's pre-pandemic traffic levels of 2 years ago, they continue to be higher than projected. B&T's traffic recovery continued in May. Based on preliminary figures, total B&T paid traffic was just 8% below pre-pandemic levels of 2 years ago and 80% higher than last May. And just last week, we hit new pandemic highs in consecutive days, carrying over 973,000 vehicles on Thursday, June 17th, and 989,000 vehicles on Friday, June 18th, which is the highest one-day traffic number since the start of the pandemic, equating to 96.4% of comparable pre-pandemic figures. As traffic continues to increase across our bridges and tunnels, the bridge and tunnel team continues to focus on customer safety. Given the dramatic reduction in traffic levels in April 2020, safety performance is now most appropriately evaluated by comparing pre-pandemic levels. B&T recorded some of its best customer safety performance metrics ever in April of last year, with 2 total collisions per million vehicles and remarkable 0 collisions with injuries. While B&T's collision rates were higher than that in April of 21, they were significantly better than 2 years ago, with 3.4 total collisions and 0.56 collisions with injuries per million vehicles, or 38% and 26% better, respectively, than the pre-pandemic performance of April 2019. Finally, I would like to acknowledge the retirement of Anthony Mattia and thank him for his contributions to bridges and tunnels. Tony is the president of DC 37 Local 1931 Maintenance Union and a Level 3 bridge and tunnel maintainer. In his 39-year B&T career, he worked tirelessly to improve job safety. His ability to forge mutually beneficial agreements helped both his membership and the traveling public. And most recently, he was an important element of B&T's COVID-19 mitigation efforts. Thank you for your service, Tony, and we wish you and your family a happy and healthy retirement. Finally, there are no bridge and tunnel board procurements for this month. Unless there are any questions, this concludes my report.
Danny, thanks for that report. Any questions for Danny about B&T? Okay, good. Thank you, Danny. Turning now to Finance Committee matters, David Keller will take us through the materials. David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll start with Budget Watch, which is available in the exhibit book and on MTA.info. This is for the month of May in terms of expenses and revenues, and for June for subsidies. Farebox revenue was $443 million favorable year to date, or 82%. And for the month of May, Farebox revenue was favorable by $98 million, or 73%. Toll revenue was $323 million favorable year to date, or 71%. For the month of May, toll revenue was favorable by $77 million. The April toll increase accounts for $19 million of the year-to-date variance and accounts for $14 million of the May variance. Actuals for Farebox revenue are being measured against the adopted budget, which is based on McKinsey's worst-case scenario and was used to minimize downside risk in the financial plan with the hope of better results. Through the first 5 months of the year, Farebox revenue has been closer to the midpoint range between the worst-case and mid-case scenarios. To keep this in perspective, however, note that actuals through May remained 62% or $1.5 billion below the pre-pandemic Farebox revenue level. Toll revenue forecasts in the adopted budget were based on the midpoint between the McKinsey best case and worst case scenarios. And when adjusted for the April 11th toll rate increase, toll revenue year to date through May is about 95% or $45 million below the pre-pandemic level. Revisions to Farebox and toll revenue projections will factor in recent developments and trends when developing the July plan forecasts. Turning over to expenses, expenses were $413 million favorable year to date, or 7%. About 70% of the favorable variance is timing related, with the remainder attributable to continuing the loosened hiring restrictions, lower electric power and fuel consumption, favorable prescription drug and health and welfare rates in New York City Transit, and lower paratransit service contract expenses due to trip usage. Adjusting for the timing related variance, the year-to-date expenses are about $120 million, or 4% favorable. Overtime, which is included in those overall expense items, was $9 million in favorable year-to-date, or 2%. New York City Transit was $28 million, or 13% unfavorable, primarily due to the weather-related impacts in February, as well as absentee coverages. All other agencies are favorable year-to-date through May. Debt service was $31 million favorable year-to-date, or 3%, reflecting lower than budgeted debt service, variable rates, and the timing of debt service deposits. And I just want to point out that last month, year-to-date debt service was unfavorable, and we had noted that there was advanced timing of deposits, and this is now that reversal is now reflected in these numbers. Subsidies, which were $383 million favorable year-to-date, and that's through June, were 17% on the strength of the real estate transaction taxes, MTA, and the payroll mobility tax. Real estate taxes were $179 favorable year-to-date, or 59%, with just over 90% of that favorability resulting from the mortgage recording tax, and mostly in the suburban counties. MTA was $95 million, or 14% favorable, mostly due to additional payment of $61 million in April from the prior state fiscal year that the MTA had initially recognized as a shortfall in the February financial plan. Other dedicated taxes on a year-to-date basis, the payroll mobility tax was $178 million, or 26% favorable. The petroleum business tax was $7 million, or 2% unfavorable. MTA aid was $18 million, or 12% unfavorable. And the for hire vehicle surcharge was $43 million, or 32% unfavorable. Additionally, the mansion tax was $32 million, or 34% favorable, and the Internet Marketplace sales tax was 14%, or 8% favorable. Please note that the $46 million combined increase in these two taxes, along with the budget amounts for these two taxes, is now being recommitted to the 2020 to 2024 capital program, not the operating budget, and the net effect of this action is $262 million decrease in budgeted operating subsidies year to date. That concludes Budget Watch. If there are any questions.
Commissioner Zuckerman.
Yeah, hey, we've been citing the McKinsey report for some time. We cited it before in early days when it was more dramatic. We've been citing it now with our forecast. I'd like to know, A, how well is it tracking against actuals? And B, will we be doing any updates about the forecast relative? Will they be doing it? Will we be doing our own? Because we are using it still when we're effectively starting to be in the forecast period itself. So can you just give me some sense of that, please?
I'm giving you some narrative to put in perspective as to how we budgeted. And yes, you're right. We did use McKinsey projections that are in the February financial plan. We are tracking them on a monthly basis. The B&T toll revenue is towards the best case scenario. And the other agencies, with the exception of Staten Island Railway, are tracking in the mid-range forecast. Staten Island Railway is still hovering around the worst case scenario, but it's a much lower dollar amount in terms of the MTA consolidated revenues. We will be revising our forecast to take into account actual trends that we're seeing when we put together the July plan, which you'll see next month.
Okay, David, back to you.
Okay, thank you. The next item is Finance Watch, which is on page 14 of the committee book, and Patrick McCoy is available to answer any questions you may have.
Back to you, David.
Okay, thank you. There are two action items for finance. The first is the draft OSIP program covering 2020 to 2024 capital plan awards over the next year, and it's on page 25. And Phyllis Rockmuth is available to answer any questions.
Thank you, David. Any questions on this procurement? If not, I'll make a motion to approve. Can I have a second? Commissioner Fleischer, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? The finance item carries. Thanks, David. Back to you.
Thanks. The next action item is the annual payment for the state assessment on the MTA and its constituent agencies for the Public Work Enforcement Fund, the PWEF, for calendar year 2021, and it's on page 27. State law requires state agencies and authorities to pay an assessment based on 0.1% of the value of public work construction contracts entered into, excluding rolling stock contracts. The assessments are used to cover Department of Labor expenses related to its enforcement of the state's prevailing wage law. The state and the MTA have a procedural agreement with payments made each year based on the estimated amount of public work contracts, with adjustments made for the prior year difference between that year's projection and actuals. This 2021 payment, therefore, is based on the 2021 estimate and an adjustment for 2020. The 2021 assessed payment is $1.482 million and is reduced by the 2020 adjustment of $38,391 due to lower actual contract value in 2020, with the result required PWEF of $1,443,990.
Thank you, David. Any questions for David on this? If not, I'll make the motion to approve. Can I have a second, please? Second. Thank you. Commissioner Herman, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstention? The item carries. I'm now going to call on Kavesh Iyer, Chief of Procurement, with respect to a couple of procurements.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have two competitive procurement actions totaling $22,994,938. The first action is an award totaling $21,174,938 to Trapeze Software Group to deliver and implement a new crew management and dispatching system. The system will support the picking, crew management, and time reporting process for Metro North Railroad. The total cost will also include an option to implement this system for the Long Island Railroad as well. The second action is a modification to a panel of contracts that serves to provide temporary medical staffing for the MTA Office of Health Services on an as-needed basis. The total cost of the modification is $1,820,000. There are no competitive actions nor ratifications proposed this month. This concludes the procurement actions for this month, Mr. Chairman.
Kavesh, thank you. Any questions for Kavesh on these? If not, I'll make a motion to approve. Can I have a second, please? Commissioner Jones, seconds. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? The procurements carry. I'm going to call on David Florio to introduce the real estate items. David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real estate has 4 action items for consideration and approval. There are 2 action items for the Long Island Railroad. The first is a license agreement with the Twin Forks chapter of the National Railroad Historic Society for the storage of rail cars in Riverhead. The second is a license agreement with Quality Automotive Services for parking on Long Island Railroad property adjacent to theirs. And there are 2 action items for the MTA. There's an amendment to the Real Estate Department Policy Number 11 to increase fees payable by MTA agencies for permits and licenses needed from adjacent property owners to facilitate our capital construction projects. And the fourth and final item is the acquisition of fee interests and permanent and temporary easements for Contract 2 of Phase 2 of the Second Avenue Subway. There are, in addition, Mr. Chairman, 3 information items. Happy to answer any questions regarding any of them.
All right, thank you, David. Any questions on the procurements or the information items? I'll make a motion to approve the real estate items. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? The real estate items carry. We now have one final set of items to discuss today related to labor agreements. Can I have a motion to convene an executive session to discuss matters regarding collective bargaining pursuant to Section 105(1)(e) of the New York State Public Officer Law?
So moved, Pat.
Thank you, Commissioner Mihaltis. I'll second it. All in favor? Aye. And we'll be returning to the boardroom and to the Zoom following the executive session. All right, can I have a motion to go back into public session? Commissioner Herman, Commissioner Barb, second. All in favor? All in favor? Aye. All right, thanks. While in executive session, the board discussed matters related to collective bargaining agreements. We will now vote on the collective bargaining agreements reached for various unions at New York City Transit, MTA Bus, Saratoga, Metro North Railroad, and Long Island Railroad. Do I have a motion to approve the agreements? Commissioner Herman, do I have a second? Commissioner, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? The motions carry, and I'll now make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Second? All in favor? Any opposed? The meeting's adjourned. Thank you all. A couple of days after Juneteenth, let me talk about diversity and inclusion and MWBE. I'm just going to read a sentence from a leading New York publication about one of our colleagues, Michael Gardner, who's Chief Diversity Officer of the MTA and responsible for the MWBE effort. Quote, "If there were a Michael Jordan or Wayne Gretzky of professional diversity, equity, and inclusion practices, that person would probably be a lot like Michael J. Gardner." Chief Diversity Officer, that's from the current issue of Cranes in New York, and happily it is all true. The MTA has outperformed every agency in New York and the country in terms of MWBE, literally billions of dollars and a 30% achievement, and that's in large part thanks to Michael Gardner and his team. And with that, Tim, ready for questions.
All right, we'll start with NJ Burkett, WABC.
Great, thanks, Tim. Thanks, Mr. Foy. How do you read the assault statistics, violent assault statistics in transit? Have they leveled off in your view, or are they going down? And what's your reaction to that?
So let me start, and I'll call on Pat Warren for a second. Look, one assault is way too many. Our responsibility is to provide a safe and secure environment for our customers and our employees. We are grateful that the city has added additional resources, and we continue to monitor it. And obviously, we're reporting monthly to the public. Clearly, there's a need for additional social services and mental health services. And let me ask Colonel Warren to step up.
Hi. So absolutely, every incident is not a good thing out there, and our heart goes out to all those that who suffer that problem. That being said, we see the statistics, they bounce a little bit. We have seen a downward trend, which is great, but it is not sufficient to make us take our foot off the pedal. We realize that we have got to get to a point where our customers feel comfortable in our system and, of course, bring back New York.
With respect to the trend that you see?
Yeah, look, the chief of the Transit Bureau reported increases in some serious crimes. And that is troubling to us as the operator of the subways. It's troubling to the police. It's troubling to our customers and our employees. And I think the immediate ask right now is additional mental health and social service resources, and I think those are desperately needed throughout the city. The pandemic has, changed everything, and has made life even tougher for some vulnerable New Yorkers.
All right, let's go down to Dave Colon of Streets Blog. Just a sympathy play, Pat. He's still got the Knicks jersey. I don't know what to say about it, but Dave, it's up to you.
Team loyalty is important.
This is still a Knicks town. I don't really see any parades in Brooklyn recently. So, Pat, I was just curious in terms of the environmental assessment that you all are doing for congestion pricing. Is that being done in-house? Is that being done? Is that going to get contracted out to some other firm? And if it is getting contracted out to outside of the MTA, have you hired anybody yet? Who's handling it?
I'm kind of stunned by the question because it belies that maybe we haven't clearly communicated. First, we've been working on the what is now an environmental assessment for a couple of years. It's being done with in-house folks, outside counsel, and outside environmental experts, and the work has been going on for a couple of years.
And now Dave is speechless, which never happens. Let's go to his right over there. Dave Meyer from the New York Post is with us.
Is it okay if I ask two questions?
Up to Tim. Sure.
All right. So my first question, which Tim might be
That was his
answer.
first question.
You got me again, Tim. I was just hoping we could get a little bit more detail on this 96th Street incident. I understand from DCPI that an emergency alarm was pulled. The power then went out. I'm wondering where the power went out, and if you all could provide some more detail about the service impact. How many delays, how many hours of delays, et cetera.
Yeah, so this is it was a triggering of one of our safety systems out there. Now, we're not going to talk about where these systems are because it's important to keep them secure, and we're not looking for people to know where they are. They're for our internal work. That being said, the importance of what this incident reflects is that when people do things like this, and this is a trespassing incident, this is something that's illegal, and it's dangerous for the individual that went into the system. When they do something like that, it is very disruptive to our system, and it's very disruptive to our customers. And when you think about vandalism, vandalism is not just a crime against the MTA, it's a crime against the entire ridership of New York City. So we do not condone this in any way. We want people to be safe. We do not want them disruptions out there, and we're quite frankly doing everything we can to try to prevent that. But just like when somebody pushes somebody on the tracks or somebody goes down on the tracks or other incidents like that, sometimes they are out of our hands, which is the point of the topic today, and they cause significant disruption, and that is just terrible for our ridership.
In terms of the impact on delays, can you tell me a little bit how riders experience this?
So I don't have the numbers on exactly what the delay is, but essentially it stops service on that particular line for a period of time until such time as we can go out and check the tracks to make sure that everything is okay. There's nobody out there that's in danger. Safety is our number one priority, and then we put them back in service. Yeah.
All right, let's go on the Zoom now
I had a second
to
question.
Jose Martinez of the City. Jose, good afternoon.
Am I muted?
We hear you. So
Okay, very good, very good. Wow, and I just see two of myself on this screen. I got to get back down there. I really do. This is weird. Pat, you had a lot of talk today in the comment session about accessorized service and paratransit service, I should say, and the performance slipping both on the on-demand program and elsewhere. To what do you attribute these problems, these complaints? Why is it happening now?
So let me call on Craig Cipriano, who I know is with us today. And there's Craig. Hey, Craig, you're
Just
muted.
need to unmute, Craig. Unmute. You got the antique bus, the antique microphone, the one, you got to hit the button there. There you go.
Sorry. So yeah, so as we discussed at the committee, it's really three issues there. The curb TRO, the fact that the TNC, TLC industry is struggling, and also the fact that we're having problems hiring on the dedicated service. But with that said, we are working to improve those.
All right, so let's move on in the room to Clayton Gusa, the Daily News. Clayton.
Pat, when it comes to the crew shortages that are causing widespread delays across all of New York City Transit's services, what else are you doing and what can you tell riders other than we just have to wait for more people to be hired and trained? Are there any other solutions on the table you're looking at? Are you looking at one-person train operation? Are you looking in bringing in retired RTO crew members? What is this? Is the situation now that riders just have to wait for you to hire and train new crews, which could take the better part of a year before service gets better?
So I don't accept the two parts of the premise, Clayton, and I'll turn to Demetrius Critchlow in a second. And the two parts I don't accept the premise is A, that it's a widespread issue, or B, that we're talking about a time period of a year. But let me ask Demetrius to address the details underlying your question.
So, obviously everyone knows that following the COVID, we had a hard and fast hiring freeze. So that's going to have its impact. The reality is we're now starting to ramp up our hiring. There were some challenges on the early side because we had restrictions because of the class sizes. But I think that the clear point that is right now, during the week, we have roughly about 40% of our current ridership. So 40% of our ridership, and if I took every one of the delays that you just said are system-wide, even with those considered, I'm still running in excess of 95% of my current service. So for 40% of the ridership during the weekday, I'm operating 95% of my service. So I think we're really making strides, and I think over the next several months, we do have an aggressive plan to try to bring more people on. We're looking at different opportunities. We're moving supervisors into the training capacity to do that. But we think we are ready for ridership to come back, and we're prepared for whatever it brings.
And what about, just can you address one-person train operation, especially in the CBTC lines? Is that anything that's being considered? I know you guys have kind of punted on that for a while, but is one-person train operation coming to CBTC, and could that potentially free up more crews?
That's not part of the discussion at all at this time.
Well, let's move on to...
The one thing I would add is the following, which is that with respect to operating positions, including train operators and conductors, we began to unfreeze that. That was the first category of employees. We've hired a significant number. As Demetrius mentioned, there have been delays in terms of, because of COVID restrictions on training classes, those restrictions have been lifted, but we've been focused on this issue. It's also one that is affecting nearly every transit agency in the country, and frankly, the airline industry and lots of others, where a significant training investment is required before an employee can start to serve the public. Tim, back to you.
Yeah, next up is Alfonso Castillo from the Eastern Province out there on Long Island at Newsday. Alfonso, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Pat, last month I asked you about the homeless situation in Penn Station, and going to ask you again about that. Talked to a lot of people over the last month who still feel it's as bad as it's ever been. I know you talked about it improving some over, I think you said, the last 60 to 90 days. Clearly, it goes beyond just homelessness. I'm hearing about really aggressive panhandlers, not asking for money, but demanding money, sometimes grabbing people, drug use in the public, people passed out. You know the drill. You go there through there every day. What's the reality of what the MTA can do about this? You know, I know you've talked about the MTA not being in the social service business, but in the transportation business. How much can the MTA do to address this, and how much of it is going to require help from the city or any other outside agencies?
Yeah, Alfonso, so important issue. I'm going to ask Pat Warren to address the latest at Penn and beyond.
Alfonso, so there's been a considerable amount of effort by the city as well as by MTA and other partners at that location. As you know, there's a confluence of organizations that meet at that particular transportation hub, which are New Jersey Transit, Amtrak, MTA, as well as the city and the city police above ground. So all those organizations are working to make significant strides to improve the conditions at that location. It is a location that is the city's responsibility. They do, and they recognize that, and they have put more outreach assets into the system. And I recommend to you to talk to DHS, Department of Homeless Services, with the city about what they're doing in that regard, as well as more police assets from the NYPD, from the MTA PD, as well as coordination with Amtrak. So there's a lot more resources going into Penn Station right now. And I know that on the Long Island Railroad, Metro, and the subway side, you'll see a significant improvement there. But there are it is a significant challenge, and the city is looking at it, and we continue to ask the city to do more in that regard.
Thank you.
All right, in the room again, Dan Rivoli from New York 1.
Hi, good afternoon. Sarah Feinberg mentioned also with the hiring freeze, HR staff was affected. HR staff also was part of the transformation plan that consolidated multiple HR departments across the MTA. Has that transformation come back to bite you now that you don't have the HR staff to get people in operation roles?
No, Dan, the premise is completely wrong. We put in place a hard hiring freeze. The first thing that we unfroze, thought out, was operating positions across the agency. The corporate functions, including HR, the hiring freeze continued for a longer period of time. The HR, the people function led by Paul Fama, is doing a terrific job in very challenging circumstances. And transformation has been a benefit in terms of more efficient use of resources, and has not caused any of the delays in terms of the time required to get people on board.
That's not what Sarah Feinberg said, so how do you square the circle? Who's right here? Did the consolidation of HR agencies across the MTA into a single entity, did that have an effect on hiring when the hiring freeze was lifted?
The answer is no. The hiring freeze had an impact on hiring people, whether they were corporate like HR or people, or whether they are operating people at subways, buses, Metro North, or Long Island Railroad. The hiring freeze, which we put in place, we announced it, it was absolutely fundamental. It would have been, frankly, irresponsible not to do it. The $14.5 billion, the extraordinary amount of funding that we got, was not a certainty until the presidential election was completed and those two special elections in Georgia had been completed. And it could have gone the other way, and had we not taken these steps, at some point we could have run out of money. If we had to do it again, we'd do it exactly the same way under those circumstances of a once-in-a-century pandemic.
All right, next question. If we go to the courtyard where Steve Burns has taken time out from his actual story to ask you a question, he's standing by. Steve.
Yes, thank you, Tim. Hi, everybody. I wanted to go back to something Sarah had mentioned. I'm not sure if she's in the room there, but something she had mentioned during her comments, drawing a direct link between the increase in police presence and improving crime numbers. What's the evidence for that direct link, and how can we say with certainty that nothing else had an impact on that?
So you can guarantee that there's more than one influencer on crime out there. So we've talked about more people being in the system affects crime. We talked about more presence of police officers helps. We talk about more security into the system. That all those things help. What are the things that we're measuring? We look at the statistics, not only our own statistics, where we look at quality of life issues, more like pound handling and reports of people breaking our rules. Urinating, defecating, smoking, all the things that happen in the system that indicate indiscipline. So we look at those statistics and those reports that come in, and we also look at the crime statistics that quite frankly, the NYPD puts together on index crimes, and we see a marginally slight improvement on that, which we've talked about before, is going in the right direction. But we have a long way to go. We have not solved this problem yet, and we are counting on, again, the city to step up and continue to step up. They've stepped up already, and we ask for their continued support, not only with police but also with outreach services.
All right,
if I could just follow up on a separate, if I could just follow up, sorry, on a separate question, mentioning the leadership changes here. What's the backup plan if the Senate doesn't reconvene to approve this?
Well, look, I'm hopeful, as I said earlier, that the Senate will pass the piece of legislation that the Assembly already has, the piece of legislation the governor sent up, and beyond that, it's an issue for the governor and the leadership of the legislature.
All right, if you're on the Zoom and you have a question, remember you got to raise your hand, the electronic hand raising. But here in the room, Michelle Caskey has her hand up from Bloomberg. Michelle.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon. So let's talk about ridership. I know that you guys will have a new report coming out next month. You anticipate that. But given that you keep hitting records every few days for subway ridership, what's your anticipation in terms of what things look like a year from now, 2 years from now with ridership? I mean, the last report was that even in 2024, system-wide, you wouldn't be getting back to 100% ridership level, 100% matching, pre-COVID. So given that you've been hitting records these past few weeks, what are you anticipating now in terms of ridership? Is there anything you can tell us?
So, Michelle, I'm going to do this. I would never get in front of our CFO and the July financial plan, both of which I hold in the highest regard. 1. 2, while ridership is increasing and we are setting post-pandemic or pandemic ridership levels, we are still orders of magnitude lower than we were at this point in 2019 and billions of dollars of revenue short over the term of the financial plan. We're encouraged by the fact that, for instance, a day or two ago, we carried 2.57 million people on the subways, but that's compared to 5.5 on a regular weekday in 2019 or 2018. So we've come a long way. We've got a long way to go. Happily, thanks to the extraordinary efforts of Senator Schumer and the New York congressional delegation, and the business and real estate and advocacy and our labor partners, we got an extraordinary amount of federal funding, $14.5 billion. There'll be an update at the July board meeting on the July financial plan, and stay tuned.
All right, before we go back to the room on the Zoom, Pat, we have the legendary Howard Price from WNBC. Good afternoon, Howard.
Good afternoon, Tim. Hi, everyone in the room. You're way too gracious. Pat, a quick question about the subway booth clerks, and I have one follow-up question on a slightly different topic. The subway booth clerks still not conducting cash transactions, other transactions at the booth. What's the long-term plan for that? Is there a plan to repurpose this job function, eliminate it? Can you go into any detail on that, or when transactions will resume?
So we currently do not plan to resume cash transactions in the booths. There's a lot of reasons for that. We're changing to the new Omni system, which is the largest change that's going on in the system. And as you all know, if you're out there right now, you see that. So there's really is no need for it. At the stations, there is a way for everybody to use cash, and that's through the MVM machines that are at those locations. So no one should be inconvenienced. The opportunity is there to use cash to get a Metro card, or we hope you start to use the Omni system.
And my follow-up question on a slightly different topic for Pat is whether or not the MTA has any comment at all on the federal decision to slow walk the AirTrain project at LaGuardia. From the point of view that this was supposed to help connect the airport, speed the ride, shave a significant amount of time by connecting air passengers to both the Long Island Railroad and the subway at Willets Point. Any comment, Pat, on what the delay means to your financial plans, your passenger growth plans, your service plans for airport riders?
That's a question that probably ought to be directed to my colleague Rick Cotton at the Port Authority. I left there 6 years ago and don't speak to Port Authority issues any longer.
And next up is Paul Berger from the.
I will say the AirTrain to LaGuardia, important project, important from a transportation point of view, economic point of view, but I'll defer to Rick.
Just teasing Paul, aren't you? Made him wait another 15 seconds. The Wall Street Journal, Paul.
Hi, Pat.
Hello, Paul.
A couple of related questions. One is you said that you, all to do with staffing, you said that you lifted the freeze on hiring for operational staff first. Could you just tell us when that was? And then more broadly, if I'm correct, when I look at MTA documents, it looks like you've shed about 4,000 positions during COVID, and you're down to about 67,000 headcount agency-wide, which looks to me like the lowest staffing levels you guys have had since you pulled out of, the last recession. So I was wondering.
So, Paul, let me deal with the second question first. We publicly reported, that we attrited 2,700 jobs, and that attrition has been maintained. I think I know the month with respect to your first question, but I don't want to make it up, and I'll ask Tim Minton or one of his colleagues to get back to you on that.
Well, but the broader point of the question, though, is just if you are currently short of staff agency-wide, what is the staffing level that you believe is sufficient for the MTA to run appropriately, and how long do you think it will take the MTA to reach those staffing levels?
So I don't think it's a question one can answer in the abstract, because I think that customer-facing employees, employees providing transportation services is one category. Someone in finance or the law department or human resources is another. So I'm not going to make a number up. I will say that the 2,700 attrition, which was an important contributor to reducing cost, what was important. It continues to add value, and I'm not going to make a head count. I'm not going to predict or project a head count.
So you don't think you cut more than 2,700 jobs through attrition and a freeze?
Yeah, no, I think we attrited a number beyond 2,700. Yes.
Okay, thank
All right, Pat, we got two more. Kevin Duggan right here, brand new correspondent for AM New York, has the next one, and then we're going to close it out with the Post.
Hi, Pat. I want to ask for an update on the borough bus redesign plans. Now the in-person meetings are coming back again. Are you planning to revive that? Where does it stand? Will it be in a different form or the same as it was pre-pandemic?
So the answer is yes, a real priority, and I'm going to ask Craig Cipriano to update us on that.
Yeah, hi. Can you see me? Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
We can, Craig.
Thanks. No, so as you know, the bus network redesign is a key piece of improving, the bus system-wide. A key piece of that was the, community interaction and the and going out to the, to gather feedback. So right now, given that we're coming out of the pandemic, we're working on a new timeline, and we will have more to say shortly on that.
Thanks, Craig. David.
My question's also for Craig, actually. Craig, in 2019, Alpatray said all door boarding would begin sometime in 2021. I'm wondering if that's still case, if that timeline is still in effect, and whether the MTA is concerned that all door boarding could encourage fare evasion or crime.
Sure. So I think, we are working hard with our partners in New York City to expand on bus lanes, busways, and to, move our buses faster throughout traffic. And one key piece to moving our buses faster would be all-door boarding, reducing the dwell time. Part of, going to all-door boarding is the, we need the system-wide implementation of Omni. Part of that would be not only what we have now, which is, customers being able to use the smartphones and smart credit cards or near-field credit cards, but also a dedicated card so that customers can purchase their fare, with cash. So, we're working hard on that, to get that accomplished. Of course, we also do believe, just as, the advocates and our customers do, that, that's a key piece to moving our buses along. So we are working hard and trying to expedite all door boarding to that extent.
Okay, so we have two last questions. First from, it's Shashi
Sharma from Pix 11 News. There we go. Sir, how does it feel like to be back in person?
Look, it feels great. I think that everybody is welcoming the opportunity to get together with friends and family, and obviously we consider journalists in both categories. So no, it's terrific. It's springtime. I think there's a sense of excitement and hope and optimism as we come out of a really dark time.
All right, the last question is from a man who doesn't realize the Knicks are not still in the game, but he says he is. Dave Colon from Streets Blog. Dave, you had one more.
I just wanted to, I didn't realize that we were doing this before. I would have asked it before, but there was a story last year, the November financial update. It said that congestion pricing might be delayed until 2023, in part because no one knew, what the feds were going to say about it. I was just curious, now that we do have this go-ahead with, do an environmental assessment, get it done as fast as you can, do you think 2023 is still the case, or are we going to get it faster than that?
Look, Dave, the prior administration in Washington sat on this cynically for 2 years. The Biden administration, in a couple of less than 2 months, told us what the environmental process is, environmental assessment with robust public outreach. We're in the process of working on that. A regular course of meetings and calls with FHWA in Washington and at the regional office in Albany. We have 15 billion reasons to have congestion pricing absolutely as quickly as we can. The team led by Allison DiSereno, who's a rock star here, is working to move it along. I'm not going to pick a date out of the air, but we're working as hard as we can every day to advance it.
All right, thanks everybody. Great to see everybody back in the room. Thank you, Pat.